And a great good evening to all of you that are joining us on the Marcy Week show this Monday, Kadooment Day here in Barbados. We've just come out of another long weekend. On Friday, we celebrated our Emancipation Day, and we remembered when Bossa set the slavery component in Barbados when there was those resistances and riots and so on going on. I don't have all the details with me at the moment, but it's unfortunate that in the midst of celebrating an Emancipation Day here in Barbados, we find ourselves right back in the clutches of a colonial mindset and a colonial master that continues to determine for us our destiny and our future. Well, I am Reverend Dr. Ferdinand Nichols, and I host this Marcy Week show on Monday nights. And I want to say good evening to the loyal opposition, all of you who are joining us tonight. We're going to have a special night. We're going to be looking at a number of different aspects, as you would have seen from the advertisement on YouTube, from the flyer there. We'll be looking at a number of things. We'll be looking at the aspect of cannabis and Canon Rogers's contribution in the Senate. We'll be taking a look at the whole aspect of land grab in the country. We'll be looking at the aspects of education. And we're going to be looking forward to welcoming some very special guests tonight. Of course, the indomitable GLYN Murray and Maxine McLean. ALWYN BABB will be back with us tonight. You'll be missing Marcia joining me tonight. She's had a long day, a challenging day with the Walk Holy Band. And Dave as well. And I don't know if Dave is going to be joining me at some point in the show tonight, but I'm going to try to manage the technological end. Wish wish me luck or pray for me, whichever one you choose, because I tell you, it's going to be quite a challenge for me tonight with all this technology I'm going to have to be sharing. But I think I'm going to try to get through it. And with your help, I certainly will. So let me say good evening to all of you joining us. I'm going to try to pick you out one by one, at least a few of you. The word. Yeah, good evening to you and Lucinda Aline, Monica Ince, good evening to you as well. Junior Rock, thank you for being here with us tonight. Owen Hines, out of Philadelphia. And just let me confirm that you're hearing me A-OK. You're receiving me loud and clear. Flo Joe Maloney, welcome to the show this evening. Shirley, thank you so much. Marva Hunt and Judy Dottin Jills, thank you. Good evening to you as well. Cedric Strawn and Queen D, pleasure to have you. Pedro Gemont. Let me see if I can get this thing done like how Marcia does it. Jefferson Sobers, good evening to you as well. Let me bring you up. Judith Ann Clark there. Good night, loyal opposition, and blessings to everyone. Yes, Queen D, thank you so much for liking and sharing. Guys, follow Queen D's example, please, and make sure you like and share in terms of the show tonight. Pedro Gemon, yes, great to have all of you joining us. I am missing one person I'm looking for at the moment, and I hope I see her soon. And of course, you all know that will be Marcia, who keeps me on my toes as it relates to the national anthem. Good evening, Victorious. Uh, Good evening to you. Thank you, Queen D, for confirming you're hearing me loud and clear. And somebody get on the line somewhere and get Marcia in because I don't want to be delayed on the national anthem. And she's not here to hold me to the national anthem. I don't understand that. Good evening, Sandra. Great to have you with us. And Tim, a pleasure to have you with us tonight as well. Good to have all of you joining us. I know it's going to be probably a challenging evening for many because they would have been out doing a lot of different things today, and I've been taking opportunity to catch up on a few things and catch a little bit of rest, of course, because we've been having a hectic schedule. I'll be sharing later, and I want to thank Marcia and Dave for giving me the opportunity not only to host the show but to promote my wife's GoFundMe efforts in terms of her medical urgent medical care. And I want to thank all of you. Several of you have donated to her effort. And I really want to say thank you on behalf of my wife. I want to thank all of you that have contributed. If you prefer, as I understand some people do, if you prefer to deal with us on a local level in terms of a local account here in Barbados, well, you can just drop me an email. It's very, very simple, ferdinandnichols@gmail.com. Drop me an email there and I will respond to you, in terms of the email. Or, of course, you can always give Marcy a call, 236-7000, and she will give you my number directly, and you will be able to reach out to me. Okay, because I have had several people who have donated and who have preferred to donate to our local account here in Barbados, and we're deeply appreciative of that as well. So thank you so very much for your support. I'll be sharing on that a little later toward the in the program, probably toward the end, and we'll just see how it goes. Okay. Well, we're up to 206. I'm still not seeing Marcia yet, and I hope she makes it on this evening. But I'm going to go to our national anthem, and as you know, we do that. And I don't know how to do the video with the national pledge, so you have to forgive me. But I do know how to get the national anthem. So, ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of Barbados. Well, thank God, strict guardians of our heritage, firm craftsmen of our faith. And now, together, let us share the national pledge. Now, I know Dave normally has a screen that he puts up with it, but I know that you know your national pledge by heart. And so I ask you to repeat it with me this evening. I pledge allegiance to my country, Barbados, and to my flag, to uphold and defend their honor, and by my living to do credit to my nation wherever I go. That is the commitment that every single Barbadian citizen makes. He makes that commitment to his country and to his flag. That is why we are deeply concerned about the direction our country is taking. And as I share that expression with you, I want you to know that as tonight we engage this show, and we're growing in number, and I thank God for you sharing and getting it out there to others that they can join us this evening as we engage the processes here on this show, and the different things that we do on the show. I thank God that our commitment is to our country. We have pledged our allegiance to our country and to our flag. We have not pledged our allegiance to a political party, to a person, to a prime minister, or to any. We haven't even pledged our allegiance to the king or the queen of England, under whose jurisdiction we no longer fall. We do not pledge our allegiance to the International Monetary Fund. We do not pledge our allegiance to the World Health Organization. We are an independent, sovereign nation. We stand not alone, but unique in terms of in the global environment. We are our own country. This is why in our national anthem, we sing it so lustily and so convincingly. We loyal sons and daughters all do hereby make it known. Do hereby make it known. These fields and hills beyond recall are now our very own. They do not belong to the Prime Minister. They do not belong to the Barbados Labour Party. They do not belong to the Democratic Labour Party or any other opposition party. These hills and fields belong to us, the 280,000 plus Barbadians that call this island home. This is our country. That is why it is incumbent upon the Prime Minister, before divesting of the national assets of this country in any way, shape, or form, to come to the people of this country. Now, you may say you elected people to represent us in Parliament, and so you go to Parliament and you pass legislation to divest the properties or to acquire property or whatever you wish to call it. And so you say the people have done it. I say to you that those representatives in Parliament, when they are aware of a significant change, a significant divestment, a significant sale of any of its national assets, if it's the airport, the people of Barbados should make that decision. If it's the seaport, the people of Barbados should make that decision. And how is that decision possibly engaged when we speak about the people? Well, let me make a suggestion to you tonight. How about, instead of having a Barbados Labour Party constituency meeting or a Democratic Labour Party constituency meeting, how about the members of Parliament who, once they have been elected to office, no longer represent the BLP or the DLP in Parliament? They represent the constituency, which contains Bs, Ds, APPs, and others, independent or whatever. You are no longer a representative of the party in Parliament. You are the representative of the constituency. And may I remind you that, and I know they're trying to change the legislation. In Parliament, there are 30 independent representatives. The Barbados Labour Party does not sit in Parliament. Let us be clear about this. The individual representatives of the constituencies that have been elected by the people to govern in the Parliament are the persons who sit there as the elected individuals of the constituency. And I propose that constituency meetings take the form of a constituency meeting of all of the people in the constituency. In other words, it should be a governmental meeting, not a Labour Party, not a Dems meeting or APP, but a governmental meeting with the constituency of the particular area, St. Lucie, St. Peter, or wherever it is. Do away with this nonsense, because once elections are over, elections are over. And so we are about governing the country, and in that, when major decisions are to be made, the people's voices, just like you wanted the people's voices to be heard, to be elected into office, The people's voices should be heard, especially when you are divesting of exceptionally expensive property, such as we see done to the Afri-Exim Bank uh, in Gemmitt's Lane. $200 million of property given away. 200. I want you to stop and think a minute. I want you to stop and think a minute. $200 million given away by our government of our property, our land, our fields and hills given away by the Barbados government. And as far as I know, without consultation with the Barbadian populace. Not your party, not your party lackeys, the people, P-E-O-P-L-E, Barbadian citizens. And you know, there's some people who seem to not get their head out of being a lackey to a political party. The time has come in this country for us to do what is in the best interest of Barbados. And if it means getting rid of a government, then we'll get rid of it. I had a phone call this afternoon or this morning from a very close friend of mine that I say close, in spite of the fact I say close, I had not heard him for some time. And he was lamenting about the direction this country has taken. And he said to me, I have voted B, I have voted D. But this is the worst government I have ever in my life experienced. And if I call his name, you would know that he is a credible individual. But I will not call his name because I believe in confidentiality and I believe in anonymity. When people, if they want their name to be called, they'll put it here in the chat or they'll give me the permission. I don't have that permission. But he called me and he was lamenting two things actually. One was the condition of our country, the whole governmental operational processes. And he said to me, Owen Arthur was right when he told us that this lady, and I'm going to be very polite because my mother taught me to be that way. I am going to be polite. This lady who leads this country by the name of Mia Amor Motley, he said this to me. Owen Arthur was right when he said she's a despot. That's what he said to me. And I know this gentleman, and I know that he has been in the past a staunch supporter of the Barbados Labour Party, even though on occasions he has voted for the DLP, a staunch supporter of the Barbados Labour Party. And he said to me, I am absolutely shocked at the direction and hurt and disappointed at the direction our country is taking. And he lamented it, and he said to me, you know, the one thing that troubles me is the apathy of the people. And in trying to encourage him, I called him by name and I said, maybe it's not apathy, because he said to me also, let me say this, he said to me also, he recalls a time in this country when the people were quiet. And it was just before a general election that cost the government, and they lost the government. He said this, I feel remnants of this at the moment. The country is too quiet. And I said to him, don't lament anything to do with apathy. I said it's not apathy. I said it is a quiet resilience of the people getting ready to throw a government out of office. And I am not a prophet, but I am predicting that this government will lose the next general election because the people of Barbados have had enough. And I have always learned one of the most difficult people to engage are those who do not keep a lot of noise, those who do not respond or react when or say anything when you're out going after them. They're very, very difficult to assess. And I'm telling you, everywhere I turn in this country, every parish I go into, every business I engage, every person, black, white, Indian, I don't care. Everybody I encounter, everyone is dissatisfied with the governance of this country. I have never seen anything like it in my life. Wherever I turn, I do not hear a commendable word from anyone. Not the whites, not the blacks, not the pink, not the polka dots, not the rich, not the poor, not a commendable word do I hear. And that is troubling. If I was in office as the prime minister, I would be seriously troubled because the people are not being distracted by fetes and parties. They are focused. They are going to enjoy themselves, but they are very focused. And this show is here to help communicate information that will help them in their decision-making processes in the future. And by way of speaking of land, and we are going to engage some of this during the show later tonight, but I was provided with a document that revealed to me that we have a problem in Barbados. The article, and I am going to let me see if I know how to enlarge it, and I don't know how to do all these fancy things, you know. I appreciate my friend Dave so much. If I can, oh, okay, I think that's it. So let me see if I can share my screen with you so that you can see what was sent to me. It does not contain a name, but I want you to see what was sent to me. So let me see if I can pull it up and you confirm that you can see it on the screen. Right, I'm going to wait until I see it come up and you confirm that you're able to see it and that you can read it. All right, I'll wait for you to confirm that you can see it and you can read it, because I want you to read it. I want you to read it with me. Right, okay. Just confirm, yes, you can see it. Just confirm for me that you're seeing it good and clear. Yes, good. All right. So let me read this. I just have a couple of minutes before my first guest joins me. But let's read this. In the lush hills of St. John, the land is speaking, but it's not speaking to the average Barbadian. Instead, it whispers through full-page advertisements in national newspapers calling for bidders to lease plantations like Todd's, Wakefield, Clifton Hall, and Huddleston, prime agricultural properties once tied to Barbados's colonial economy, now available to the highest bidder. Listen to this, on the terms that effectively exclude the very people most in need of opportunity. A recent public ad published in The Nation, July the 9th, 2025, lists multiple plantations for lease in St. John, one of the island's most fertile and underdeveloped parishes, but there's a catch. No listed price, no public lease terms, no criteria for inclusion, just a fine print that interested parties must submit sealed proposals with financial offers. Let's call it what it is: a quiet auction for the privileged, a modern-day plantation rebranding that pretends to be about opportunity, but is in practice a coded gatekeeping mechanism. Who gets to bid? Who can offer upfront investment at scale, propose full agro-tourism or commercial developments, and sit at the table with the government agencies and trust boards? Not the average Barbadian farmer, not the black cooperative, not the smallholder with a vision, but no connections. We have seen this before. Plantations for lease, but not for us. Whether at Society Plantation with still overgrown, crawling with cow itch, a haven for rodents and criminal elements, right next door to a secondary school that could benefit immensely from agricultural training and community-based learning. Instead, the site sits abandoned, its overgrowth symbolic of everything wrong with the land governance in Barbados. And what of the recently concluded wheat gathering in St. John? What pride can we claim when the very lands tied to our history and survival remain an embarrassment, overrun and unmanaged? What message do we send to the next generation looking across the road at a rotting legacy? As the Barbadian poet Camille Brathwaite once wrote, the sun's going down on the same cane field, same silence. That silence now feels like complicity. George Lamin said, the architecture of colonialism is not just physical, but mental. I want to repeat that. The architecture of colonialism is not just physical, but mental. I want you to hear it. The architecture of colonialism was not just physical, but mental. And that is where we as Barbadians have been unable to break the slavery, the bondage, the prisons that hold us in slavery in our heads. That is why when all other African countries are breaking ties with colonial masters, we are reestablishing them, even though we call ourselves a republic. We are re-establishing colonial powers, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, everything to do with climate change, everything to do with the World Economic Forum. All of these international globalists, elitists, are taking over our country. We are not against development, but take the Pierhead project, which I am going to touch on. The writer goes on and says, and this architecture remains intact when access is denied, opportunity is auctioned, and development is dictated by wealth. The urban closure, Pierhead, and the disappearance of the public. In Bridgetown, the Pierhead Marina development stands as another testament to exclusion. Promoted as a symbol of national renewal, it has instead become a fortress for the elite. The former CEO of Coca-Cola has taken it over, bought it out, invested millions of dollars in it. He is the sole owner. That is what the Nation article says. He's the sole investor. What was meant to be an open waterfront, accessible to all Barbadians, is now dominated by private yachts, elite condos, and concrete walls, and Line Grove shopping center type facilities. The boardwalk, once envisaged as a cultural artery, has become a gated abstract. Where are the public markets like Oystins? Where are they? Where are the youth centers, the promised integration of heritage and modernity? Instead, access is cut off, and the public is left to peer through fences at what was once theirs. And to add insult to injury, the very companies executing these elite projects are often owned or heavily influenced by the descendants of the same plantation class that benefit from Barbados' slave economy. Their names persist on contracts, on building sites, on policy boards, ensuring that the nations continue to be built by and for the few. Well, time does not permit me to expand further on this particular contribution that was sent to me, but I think you get the picture. The picture that we get is that when we thought that becoming a republic would mean that we were being set free completely from colonial masters, all that has happened is that we have found that we have traded one for the other. And that is my opening remarks. Let me take this opportunity to welcome my first guest to the show this evening, a gentleman that I have shared the stage with here on more than one occasion, and one who I am tremendously blessed to sit at the feet of and learn on so many occasions. I'm tempted to say, I think the word is indomitable, sir. Murray, pleasure to have you on the Varsity Show tonight. Good evening, sir, and I trust that you have had a good bank holiday.
Yes, I got it. As you can see from my shirt, I'm wearing one of my Saga Boy shirts
I see.
in keeping with this festival. Remember when we're going to Saga Boy, you wear sort of bank holiday, and these kind of combinational colors were considered country clothes. Right now, it's become fashionable. It only shows you how things have changed and tastes have changed.
Oh,
So I thought that
yes.
I would get into the old traditional Belgian spirit by dressing accordingly. But you gave me such a real welcome. I almost said keep talking because I was enjoying it. I was,
Well, Glenn, I have to say that you know me, and I don't waste words when I speak. I'm very honest. I sit at the feet of persons like yourself, and I learn a lot. And I appreciate you educating all of us, not just myself, but all of us on the loyal opposition, with the years of experience that you have had, especially in the realm of governance and politics.
thank you very much. But please believe me, I also listen to the others like you on the show to learn from you, to learn their perspective or further information. So it's a mutual relationship. And
Yes,
I'm
yes,
glad and proud
absolutely.
to be able to contribute to it. So that's why I like to listen to the program has had a certain level of information and
Hmm.
dealing with topics, which
Hmm.
I think has made it earn a lot of respect and support. And I hope to contribute by maintaining that high standard. But before I get into my topic, I just want to say that if I ever were to have the opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister again and ask a question, my first question would be, please explain to me in simple, clear-cut language that me and all other Barbarians can understand. What was your thinking behind giving away that mammoth acre of public land at the Jamet's Lane? Yeah, please explain what free of course. Explain to me what was the rationale, what logic secretly because we never knew about it, but at least help us to understand. But she's never yet sought to justify it. She's never once yet sought to put the public by their ease by trying to explain in some kind of way why she did it. Because, and I say that because she comes from a family which has had long-standing interest in real estate,
Hmm.
in acquiring properties all over Barbados. So having and every part of the Barbarian dream had me to own a piece of the rock. So having that, why would you give it away? Why?
Yes, yes. Why?
What got into your head? Because no other leader of Barbados had ever even come close to doing something as atrocious as that. And to me, that is unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable. There's no justification. When other countries around the world are controlling especially smaller countries and vulnerable countries, the ownership of their land and property, but outsiders, we are giving it away. Not even leasing or renting or
Yeah.
whatever. Amazing. Anyhow,
Wow. Wow.
that would be my take. But my topic tonight for it is some national hits and misses. Some national hits and misses. Let me explain. When I use the term hits, I'm referring to successful events or actions that have taken place over the last week or so. And when I talk about misses, I'm referring to failures or disappointing or things that have fallen short. So I'm going to look at, I wouldn't have time enough to do a lot, but I think there are two or three which I would like to get into. First of all, um, I want to deal with, I'm dealing with this stuff because a lot of people would have been naturally been distracted and whether they like it or not, or their mind would have been distracted or taken up with the necessary and the usual and expected hubbub and of corporate, etc., which has officially come to an end today. So I want to bring people back to reality and back to real life. So I do so by first of all saying that one of the most enduring and impactful events in the last week or so, to my mind, as a person and as a still self-considered journalist and news person interested in and evaluating events, would have been the question of crime. Right, question of crime, particularly what seems to be a new trend of the Commissioner of Police in informing the public on a more fulsome and frequent level as to what is happening with the force, their successes, their intentions, giving us glimpses into the strategy, their tactics. I want to commend the Commissioner of Police for coming to the public and explaining, because that way, by using the media to inform the public, it gets their buy-in, they understand, they can follow the logic or lack of it in the event. And therefore, because they can understand and rationally follow, it means they are more likely to support and understand and give the police service the needed attention and support to continue this ongoing fight against crime. But I think that while they must come in, the police commissioner's action, and he's using more data and step-by-step information to inform us. So I want to commend, and the public can only get better, and you can get only more support by doing it that way. So, and I would like to encourage him to keep it up. And I noticed in his presentation, he made reference to a topic which I had pointed out and mentioned, and I'd been critical of in one of my most recent presentations, was the question of what I call scrambler bikes. These bikes that are being used are now part of tools of the trade internationally for gangsters and terrorists and assassins and whatnot. And I said then, he made reference to it, and it reminded me that just like because they know, just like guns, part of the tools of trade of crime, I think they should be those that are not licensed and authorized and registered should be taken off the street before any apologies. In the same way, that when in the past, when in the early days of the Barbados Defense Force, in 1979, it merely banned camouflage clothing. And when the last time when they called for the banning of hoodies, people were against it because it makes no fashion statement in Barbados. That's not and if you look at the origin of hoodies were never intended to be a fashion statement, to be fashionable streetwear. Hoodies came as a means of keeping athletes warm, and a means of people who live in burial houses and working to keep them warm. That was already natural. But then, like most things in modern life, it makes a transition into the wider world. It became fashionable with the rap artists and the performers, other artists, celebrity. So now it's become a part of standard wear. But I'm saying we have to look at the greater good. The greater good of Barbados demands that sacrifices are made to preserve the stability and the sanctity of the society for the majority, the vast majority. So there are times when other persons, minorities, will have to give up certain, particularly when they offend the national conscience and offend the ability of the country to protect itself. So I'm saying there's nothing special about hoodies. There's nothing. That's just like there was anything special about banning camouflage clothing, and we've lived with it. The world has not come to end in Barbados because people are not allowed to wear fashionable camouflage clothing in public. And therefore, in the same way that you're banned camouflage clothing, let us ban the importation, sale, display, or reign of hoodies, because they contribute to the difficulty of identifying persons who are committing crime.
Yeah, more than intent.
Precisely more than intent. Let us do that, and the public would have to understand it and live with it. The minority who wear them as youngsters, they would just because you'll be also protecting them and their family and their friends from any possible. So let's get serious and do it and get that out of there. But there was any legal loopholes that prohibit from doing. Let us sort out that and get it done to me as an urgency. But the other thing, while I commend the police, commissioner of police, and the police service for the more, and I hope that we have more of these press conferences, both ready to update the public, also as the occasion demands. I think we know up to 31, 32 deaths, something like that.
Yeah,
And
some in the ballpark of 32, 33, I think it is.
right, okay, there we are. But let me deal with the commission that come back. Remember to come back to Minister Kurt Humphrey.
Okay.
Remember to come back to that. But I have a couple of criticisms of the presentation by the Commissioner of Police, not for content, but the visual images also have to convey messages to persons. I'm saying for the last two major press conferences, the Commissioner of Police has sat at a desk to deliver. If you look internationally, you see persons where they're making major announcements or police forces and where they stand. You would know as a preacher you stand. Because stand gives a certain status psychologically to you. First of all, it allows you to breathe better. It gives you more self-confidence. You're able to gesture. And it makes you seem as though you are in charge of the situation visually.
Correct.
That is why that's why people stand. It's psychological. You're doing human behavior. So it's not by accident. Not only that, by sitting, I noticed the police commissioner sat, and his head was obscuring the vision statement of the Barbados Police Service. You can see his vision at the top. Above his head also was the crest. These symbols and representations of the police service are just as crucial to the content and the action of the police force, because they're subliminally, psychologically reinforce themselves, what they're doing in the public's mind. That's why you have a national flag, a pledge, an anthem, a crest, because these visual things are important not only for countries but for institutions. Particularly the police force has an enviable task of being tasked with protecting the life and security of the country, which is the first and primary call of a government. So I'm saying, but in addition to that, to do that, to stand, you have a redesigned podium, on which you can have the same crest of the police service on the front that the camera pick up and reinforce in people's mind the police service. And all they have to do is do the same thing with the vision statement, or reposition the cameras. Rather, the camera being on him, he stands, it can be repositioned so you see both him standing in an authoritative fashion, and also the vision statement and the image and crest of the Barbados Police Service. So that will be my recommendation for him for future things. And you can have his officers around him standing to give him visual and institutional support. That is why when you see other institutions have persons standing, it's a way of letting the public know these people are not on their own. They are part of an institution. They're part of a body who stand together. These symbols are important. But I also, at the same thing, have a miss where that is concerned. But this does not involve the commission. This involves Minister Kurt Humphrey, who since the 25th of March, 4 months and days, has been designated Minister of Crime Prevention, replacing Minister Corey Lane. And since then, I can only recall 2 minor statements that he made, and I read or reported, which he said that you'd have to meet with people first and talk, and he was not ready yet to talk. I think one thing was said, I remember reading or hearing him say, and he said that he would have to, first of all, he would want to talk with the chieftains, the leaders, or the top in the crime situation, which to me did make sense, because you'll be falling in the same trap that Minister Lane had been falling into when he met with the leaders of the criminal situation. But apart from that, he has yet to say or do anything that will make people identify him with his role as Minister of Crime Prevention, which apart from the economy, is even more than the economy, is more critical than anything. Barbados. His name is, and he speaks at length, and every time he talks about the great work he's done and been doing for the elderly, for the disabled, for the vulnerable groups, all important work, all critical work. But he so far has not yet, in my mind, and in the public's mind, done or said anything to associate him with crime prevention as the ministerial responsibility. And I would have thought that even with these last murders, he did not even issue a statement commending the police, supporting. He had not yet joined the battle. As minister, he's to lead the charge, and he should be prepared to leave from a friend. I think that he should do that. Some people think that he's been handling a poison chalice, that it is such a complex job that it is hard to manage. Other people manage it. This will be a test of his true mettle, because he's been a much more demanding and critical role than with the other ministerial responsibilities for disabled, etc., etc. It's a nice sociable community building, nation building, but not as critical as this one. And he needs to, or as the obviously on picky teeth, and come and talk about it to the public. Because
I've heard, sorry, GLYN, I've heard that one in a while.
But I like to use this basionism from time to time
Yes.
to reinforce them in the minds of particularly the younger people.
Yes.
So that is the thing that I want to talk about in that regard. The other major hit would have been the presentation early this week, or was it last week, by the Democrat Labour Party on its report on crime prevention. What was it? It's called what now? It's called entitled "Blueprint to Rescue a Nation." Blueprint to Rescue a Nation, and that was presented. I forget exactly what date it was. You can probably remind me by the Lady Opposite Office in a ceremony which I thought was a very impactful ceremony. And while I thought it's a major development for Barbados, both the manner, the tone, and the glimpses of the content, because I admit I have not yet read the document. And I have made it known that I want a printed copy because I am not into online foolishness. I want to get my document, dog it, write it, make my notes. I can touch it. I don't have to depend on bandwidth or Wi-Fi. They're accessible to me anytime. So I'm willing to pay to get a copy of it. And I would suggest that the DLP, people, the Barbadians would buy that, use that to raise funds for the party. I think it's an important document from the institution, and I want to commend Lady Officer Mr. Thorne for having tasked Ms. Verdi Pisa with the responsibility of chairing that commission. And to me, she's done an exemplary job for it. And while I have not read it, I've heard enough from her to make it appear to me that it's not going to be one of these usual pro forma, routine, superficial presentation. But that it's gone, it's taken reporting on crime, and while it's not exhaustive and I think it has taken us in a direction to once the details of the content live up to what has been presented so far by Mr. Pisa, I think Barbados can benefit a lot. I think the government can benefit a lot because the tone of that document so far is far exceeds what I've heard coming from any other expert, consultant, professor about crime in Barbados. And I must also make another confession. I'm not surprised, therefore, at the quality of this work shared by Ms. Verdi Pisa, and obviously backed up by other members of standing that constituted the whole commission team. They did an admirable job. So they're two are to be commended. Because of my background with the social sciences, I was able to pick up certain cues. It broadened my when Ms. DePisa in making her present her summaries and insights and snapshots into the report. I could, by some of the things she said and some of the areas, I can see that there's no ordinary report, that she has gone far and wide and deep in the question of crime. But I'm not in the least bit surprised, because first I said that this is an important development for the Democrat-led party as an institution, particularly one that is about to have its annual conference later this month, a major milestone. To me, when this is properly presented to the public, I hope it is given online and people get copies, and it will raise the profile of the party and its standing because it's making the contributors make to crime. So therefore, I'm very positive. I have a very positive feeling about it, and I think it could change the whole trajectory and direction of public perception of the Democrat Labour Party. But I'm not surprised, like I said, at the quality of the content of the report. Of course, I've long been familiar with the scholastic and academic background of Ms. DePisa. Ms. DePisa has for a long time been more than just another lawyer. She has intellectual depth which comes through in her influence, and obviously of the report. By saying her name, and she would have some influence on, right? But I know we live in an age now where education and the value of education and good education, they're not as highly valued and respected and highly regarded before. There's a time when one who won a Barbados scholarship, etc., or Barbados exhibition, that represented excellence. But these days we're not supposed to. We want excellence in cricket, but we don't want excellence in education. You get excellence in cricket by working hard and training and practicing and doing the best. But those efforts are not supposed to go into education, the public perception. But Miss DePisa won a Barbados exhibition, which is next in ranking to Barbados scholars. So therefore, she has brought that. In the past, I've seen her brought that kind of thinking, that kind of intellectual quality to her presentation in public. But this time, it has come even more to the fore. And to me, while she might have been held back in the past by her internal rivals and detractors in the DLP, this time this should push her to the fore because it's an unchallengeable work of high intellectual quality. But Ms. DePisa not only won a Barbados scholarship, but when she went to England, she studied at the University of Southampton, where she got upper side class honors, right? Where she got upper side class honors, and then she studied at the University of London, where she earned a merit in a Master's of Law degree that specialized in criminology and criminal justice. Her upper side class honor was in law and politics. So she's no sloth intellectually. So I want to commend her for putting the benefits of her intellect and her, which she's not yet been given the chance to demonstrate from which the public can benefit, to put it into a document from which I have great respect for that, and I hope. So therefore,
we've just lost your audio.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah.
Got you back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I therefore, like I say, I want to again commend her and urge as many Barbadians to read it online and best buy a copy. The DLP has not benefited from any subvention, which was not controlled by law or the Constitution. It's a policy decision of the state of the Parliament, what they call it, the Commission of Parliament that administers Parliament. So then there's nothing fancy for you don't have to amend the Constitution or pass any law. That's an internal thing by the Commission of Parliament, which contains members of Parliament from both sides, but dominated obviously by the government. And if the government had its will, if the Prime Minister had her will, wanted that she could make it possible for them to get some kind of this part of subvention as part of your contribution to the preservation of democracy. If you can give away $200 million plus to the Africa of land and which is of perpetual value and can only write, why can you find it to give what, $150,000 chicken feed to the preservation of democracy, uh, and to the preservation, because the BLP will not always be government.
That's right. That's
Will
right.
not I remember that the point Arthur made, when he instituted that policy, and some of those who are running high in the government said, no, don't give the DLP. And he said that. And this is probably in 1994, just after 1994. He said, no, the BLP will not always be in government, and you will need it too. And when they lost in 2000, they needed it. So I'm saying that there's more than a just and deserving cause. But history will take care of it for the DLP to get power of the salvation. But in the meantime, this is a chance for the public to show its appreciation by making a contribution to the party,
Yes.
by
Yes.
buying copies of it. It's worth, believe it, it's worth it. And you see, what will happen is that after you read that, and when the manifesto, the DLP comes up for the next, you will see their thinking, manifesto, the policy. Not only that, it will give us a contradistinction, a contrast by which to judge the offerings of the government. And we will not be doing as is happening in education. We had education, so-called education reform. We had committees meeting, town hall meetings, discussion, and nobody had any prior knowledge. The public did not have a prior knowledge of what was being proposed. So it meant you had to go to a meeting and react instantly to something that's being verbally presented to you, not having seen it before, to study it, to analyze it for yourself. You have to try to follow what somebody's saying in this regard. The same thing now seems to be happening with educational transformation. But this time, you will have a document that can give you the basis of the thinking. You can analyze it, you can critique it for yourself, and this would therefore allow you to make a better. You would have a more informed public, and maybe that the government might be the reason why we're not getting any real information about these things and other things, which I will talk about, some of which I mentioned. The government doesn't want you to be too informed to judge them too harshly.
Well, we're going to get into a little bit of this educational aspect, GLYN, and hopefully you'll be able to stay with us in the show tonight.
Yeah.
There's actually a segment that Marcy has asked me to share, a video out of Jamaica, I think it is, on education, to do with the failing of our students, because I think you would have been aware that I believe this is probably, if not the worst, one of the worst years of results in terms of the I think it's the CXCs and other exams that we have had, which is of deep concern. So, and it appears that it's not just happening here. It appears that there are one or two other Caribbean countries that are experiencing a fall off in this aspect as well. So we will be touching on that later on tonight. But I certainly appreciate what you've been sharing, because, and I did put a copy of the link in the chat here and in the YouTube chat for that press conference. It was on Friday.
Oh, last Friday. Wow.
It was last Friday, Commission on Crime report. I myself did not have a chance to view it as yet, but listening to what you have presented tonight, I certainly am going to take the time. I have had one or two, not very long, but one or two interesting interactions with Ms. DePisa, and I have found her exceptionally respectful. I have found her exceptionally intellectual, informed, and she's able to present in a manner that does not disrespect who she's presenting to, even though they might not necessarily agree with her. And I have found a level of integrity, if you want to call it that. I don't know if I'm using the right word. With her, absolutely.
If I may have one last word on this.
Yeah, sure.
Your last few comments reminded me that by the tone, when Miss DP presents, she was not stumbling and butting about for words or thought. She flowed. She had internalized it. You can see that it represented her work, that she knew the subject well. And that is what made it so impactful. You felt it was sincere. It was coming from her through the report. And that is what made it even more important and significant to my thinking.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay.
Can't but agree with you more. Well, GLYN, we're going to have Mr. ALWYN BABB join us, and hopefully we will have Maxine on as well. Good evening, ALWYN. Good to have you back with me this evening. I find myself honored and privileged to have you two esteemed gentlemen
Good
on the
evening.
panel with me this evening.
Good evening,
And
Alwyn.
Good evening.
Oh,
I
greeting.
I should be the one who's honored because Mr. Murray, we have not met personally, but I always followed his pronouncements on culture and his contributions on education and national issues, and I find him very intellectual and enlightening. And you, certainly, Pastor, I have a deep respect for those persons who pronounce the word of God, and I am I am the one who is deeply honored to be here tonight to share with you.
Well, I think we should move on from this mutual admiration society. Otherwise, you may soon
You
start
see,
asking, you may soon
well,
asking the public to vote.
that is until Maxine joins the group, and then everything finished, everything was, and then
But nice to be here with you too, Alwyn.
all right,
yeah,
good night.
wonderful. We have a number of subjects to cover tonight, gentlemen. As I expect Maxine will soon be joining us. As you would have seen from the information, if you were able to view the information on the YouTube channel, we're going to be covering on a couple of areas, and
Yes.
one of those areas, I'm just trying to find it back here because I often do not necessarily trust my memory. I try to put everything down in writing so I don't forget anything. Um, but very recently, gentlemen, we've had some interesting comments coming out of the Senate made by Canon Rogers with regards to the whole aspect of the, I call it the legalization or implementation of cannabis in the country. And I'm just going to see if I can, do I have it here that I can pull it up? Um, no, I don't.
I have
But
it in front of me.
you have it right because
In front of me.
good. I sent that. I think I sent that out.
To me. Yes.
I'm just trying to locate my copy here in front of me that I can interact with you, gentlemen. Glenn, I think you would have had one too.
Yes, I've seen it.
Um,
Yeah,
right,
I've read the piece.
right. And I found it very interesting because I've been asking some questions myself over the last several days. As a matter of fact, just today, gentlemen, I was trying to locate some of the reports coming out of certain cities in the US who had legalized it. And I came across one, can't remember the city, I don't have it to hand, where they have had increase in vehicular issues, vehicular accidents, and so forth since that time. I've spoken with people who have used the drug. Um, I don't want to say illegally; they've used it, and I know persons who have. And I have observed some comments on in the international arena in terms of the medical profession, who seem to indicate, in some instances, irreparable damage to the brain
Mhm.
because of the content of the drug. Now, I'm not an expert at this by any stretch of the imagination, but it would appear to me that Canon Rogers is seeking to raise some caution, if I can put it that way, with regards to its use. And since both of you gentlemen would have read the extract, I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the loyal opposition would love to hear your comments with regards to the whole matter.
Let me go first. In the past, when there have been any issues, Colonel Rogers have raised red flags. Remember, not too long ago when the young lady spoke her according to her conscience, and he said he hoped that this young lady is not victimized. And a few weeks later, she was expelled or she was relieved of her duties of this from the Senate. So Colonel Rogers has a way of alerting us to some issues that are going to affect Barbados sometime in the future. And he
Mhm,
probably has an insight into what is happening. He cautioned the us more or less for against the use or the availability of marijuana to, especially to the youth, who will be saddled with repaying the debt. That is more or less what is covered in the article. And
Yes.
as a
Yes.
teacher, when that becomes so accessible with in our current climate, community climate, how do we guard our young men who sometimes are easily influenced by those fellows sitting on the block and those persons who may use the drug? How do we guard our young people going to school? What do parents look for? How do they work with the guidance counselors in schools when certain behaviors present themselves? That is what we have to, both male and female, and how we have to guard against those negative effects, because this drug, marijuana, is becoming so easily accessible that we cannot hold our youth, prevent our youth from having easy access to it. How do we do that?
Right. And you would recall as well in the article, Alwyn, it said that back in April, the acting director of public prosecutions, Alison Seal, firmly linked, and I noticed the word firmly linked the rise in violent crime in Barbados to marijuana use and voiced strong opposition for any move to legalize the drug. Glyne, your thoughts as you
Yeah,
read it through and the comments that
yeah. My,
Canon Rogers would have made.
let me put my comments in some of the research that I've read over time with the social sciences. If you do cultural anthropology, you'll discover that there are records that, as from the earliest recorded and artifacts, mankind has always indulged in what they call mind-altering substances. If they want to celebrate a wedding, a funeral, something, so they would make for drinks, fermented drinks from corn, wheat, berries, fruit, anything that would change. So this is part of the human being psyche, that they want to change a mood for various reasons. So therefore, people seeking to change their mood is not anything new or
Right.
derogatory or anything unusual, but it's the means by which you do that matters. Unfortunately, Barbados has done it, has established a long reputation of the producer of some a very highly admired, highly accorded mood altering substance, rum. We're supposed to be the birthplace of rum, so we too have contributed to that. But the thing is that we have never sought to glamorize the use of rum and to intellectualize the use of rum, which is just as much a mood altering circumstance, obviously can be used for medicinal. Alcohol, let me talk rather rum. Alcohol can be used for medicinal purposes also, and it's used for medicinal purposes. But we never sort of glamorize it and normalize it like has been done with marijuana, right? And further, you talk about about the legalized. While it has not been legalized officially, why certain less than 14 grams has been decriminalized. The
Yes.
Barbadian public, to my mind, has, if it's decriminalized, me is legal.
Yes. In their psyche.
That's how they've interpreted. That's why they smoke it
Yes.
so freely wherever, whatnot. And therefore, I think what has happened, because it has been, I am told from all the studies that it has certain beneficial properties for mankind, like most plants are. But it's the quantity, it stays from apparently different alcohol stays in your body tape for 4 or 5 days or something. But marijuana, although you would know because you are a coach, you would know these things, but you might have come across it in athletic field for a
Yes,
week, 3, 4, 5 weeks. So it's a
yes,
different kind of fish. And my last comment on this would be that I am yet to know of any society group that has quote unquote normalized marijuana, that has prospered, invented anything to man, that have grown in stature, that have run big. To me, in other words, the people who use it for long, and by its prolonged use, it is said to have people are less productive, they'll have less energy, they're less motivated, they just want to feel good and cool out. So it has an impact on individuals and groups and the whole society. And I think that is what also Canon Rogers was talking about.
Right. And, you know, from my research, because I must say, gentlemen, that I have benefited from the access to chat GPT and AI, you know, I find them to be elements like fire. They can be used for good or they can be used for evil, but the actual thing itself doesn't know either way. It's really the people who are using it. And from what my research shows me, it has what is called cognitive impairment. That is problems with attention, memory, learning. It provides difficulty in decision making and problem solving. You are at a higher risk for depression, anxiety, and in some cases, psychosis. And in the case of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, you have worsening symptoms with people who are suffering from those aspects. But before we proceed any further, I see that my other guest is in the room, the one that is going to eliminate all of our votes immediately on arriving in the room, because at least we stood a chance. You know, somebody could have voted for you, ALWYN, or for GLYN or for me, but when this other individual enters the room, all are voting over. Okay, so we could as well relax and accept the ultimate
results.
accept the results, because we have just lost the election.
It's a big smile on her face. Good night,
Maxine, welcome to the discussion tonight. We're having an unusually different show. Your mic is muted. We're having an unusually different show in the sense that we want to have a discussion over about 3 or 4 topics that Marcia had sent to me, and we have actually begun awaiting your arrival. But we were thinking about at the very beginning when I brought ALWYN in, as to, you know, Glenn mentioned maybe we should move on because, you know, we don't want to get the voting in terms of popularity. And I made the comment, but from the time my other guests come on, all that done. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion.
What I can tell you, good evening to you and good evening to the members of the loyal opposition. Once I saw Glenn come on, I had to go and choose an outfit. That was
and I never got a chance.
Thank you very much.
I was going to come on with something very colorful, you know. You all are tempting me to turn off my camera, go and change my shirt. Welcome, Maxine. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So nice to have you joining us. Really great to have you joining us on this bank holiday night. I trust you had a good day.
I had a day at home. I'm very quiet. My siblings are not happy with me because they tend to go down to the family house, and I tell them on Kadooment Day I prefer to stay at home based on what I do not see.
Well, certainly we're happy to have you join us, and we are in the throes of the discussions of the first discussion, and this is around the comments that were made by Canon Rogers as it relates to the use of marijuana in the country. And Glenn had just got through sharing his perspective in it that ALWYN did a little earlier. So we were just taking a look at the comments that the Canon made and the kind of communication he's trying to get across to the Barbadian public. You know, I don't think necessarily from a religious perspective, but from what I think he sees as the reality in the terms of the Barbadian public.
I agree. I think it is a societal issue, and we need to recognize that. I mean, yesterday, as I normally do, I go to the beach on mornings, and typically on Saturday mornings before Kadooment Day, for their morning, around the time I normally go, most of the people are gone. But if they might have started later or whatever the case may be, there were a lot of revelers on the beach. And the one thing that struck me, in fact, I said to one of the group with whom I swim, I said, if we're not careful, we'll get a contact high. There was so much marijuana smoking. And then there were some young men who were in close proximity, sitting on the beach, and then they came in. I am concerned really and truly about the prevalence of use, the consequence of that use, particularly on minors. And I say that, and I tried to find some research on Barbados, you know, and I came across a couple articles. I didn't find too much, but I didn't have a lot of time to search. But I'll share a couple titles in relation to work done in Jamaica, because as one of the articles said, marijuana smoking has been pretty prevalent in Jamaica for years, but with the decriminalizing of it, you have seen a significant increase in use of school children. And one article here said ganja babies, more and more children reportedly seeking medical attention after using marijuana. And then it went into some statistics and so on. And one article, it's an article called, and I have it here in front of me for those who may think I am making this up. It's Get the Statistics, Drug Use in Jamaica talks about male use is higher than female use for all ages. And the statistics go from 12 years to 14, 15 to 17, you know, in term up to 55 to 65 years. And this is, I'm not going to read the article because, as you say, we're looking at several things this evening. But this article starts up by saying a 50% jump in the number of children seeking assistance at public medical facilities for ganja-related illnesses in Jamaica since the weed was decriminalized in 2015. It's causing worry for local health officials. And I'll read the second paragraph. With 70% of the population having easy access to ganja and law making possession of up to 2 ounces no longer a criminal offense, children, some as young as 12 years old, have been trying the weed in its many forms. And I think that's important. And it says, I read the last paragraph in this thing, well, it says, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton last week, this article, as I said, was a 2017 article, said, told the Sunday Gleaner that he was very unhappy with the findings. And this is a quote, the drug treatment program of the ministry, primarily for persons affected by marijuana usage, and in particular since the decriminalization of 2 ounces or less, has shown a 50% increase in persons, young people, school children, adolescents, which raises a lot of concern for us. And then there was another story where more than 60 children have been taken to hospital in Jamaica after eating sweets containing cannabis. And that was from the Minister of Education. Now, if we saw that happening immediately after the decriminalizing in Jamaica, my question is, what is happening in Barbados?
Can I interject here to ask Maxine a question?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yes. Okay. The Canada has, we're talking about decriminalizing, but Canada has legalized. I would love to see research coming from that country based on, know that it's legalized in Canada, what is happening among the youth. Because we're talking about legalizing.
Now that is something I would need to go at. What I can tell you is I've actually seen the inside of one of the dispensary things. I mean, because this is recreational marijuana. What we have in Barbados, because I don't know if, well, I think it was mentioned on a previous program, because there was an advertisement just before, late last week, let me put it that way, targeting Barbadians as they enjoy crop over. I don't know if you remember, if you saw that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Pastor Ferdinand.
No, I didn't.
If I while we're talking, I will see if I can pull it up on my phone and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But they essentially were suggesting, in fact, let me look as we speak. They were essentially suggesting that you should enhance your enjoyment of the celebrations by visiting them.
I heard about it. I heard about it.
I will look
it.
And send it to you now. And it was circulated. These were advertisements found on the Instagram page of one of these licensed distributors. Now, and I spoke to this yes, I did speak to this, because on according to our laws governing pharmacies, and the dispensing of medicinal marijuana essentially comes under that kind of arrangement. It has to be dispensed by a medical doctor. Pharmacies cannot legally advertise. Oh, I know what it was. It was on the call-in program, not this program that I raised it, because the moderator, Mrs. What's her name now? She's an attorney. The name will come back.
I think Turton, is it?
Yes, Mrs. Turton. She started out the program making reference to this. And I immediately went online and did the research to look at two things. One, the legislation governing the this company that is dispensing medicinal marijuana, as it is called, and to recognize that it has to be done on the prescription. Now, if it is a prescribed substance, medication, like a pharmacy, and the pharmacies in Barbados operate under legislation, the Pharmacies Act, which says that you cannot advertise to the public prescribed drugs. If you're selling chocolates, over-the-counter medications for headaches, coughs, etc., that do not require prescription, you can advertise publicly. You can advertise directly to John on Jay in public. So my whole question was, and I called on the authorities. There's an authority governing the production and processing and all of that, distribution of medicinal marijuana, to clarify for the public what the case was. Now Pedro Gemmet is asking me a question: what is medicinal marijuana? I am just using the language, because some will argue that there's no difference. I am using the language of the legislators and the policymakers who are in office at this point in time, because I also want to be clear in my mind what is the essential difference between that and the other substances that people use called marijuana, who use it for recreational purposes. So I think what is happening is, go ahead,
Mark. No, when you're finished, Mark.
I was saying what we have is a situation where there is need for clarification coming from the government, because if what I saw advertised is allowed to continue, then it is making a mockery of any attempt to put legislative constraints and frameworks in place to govern what is identified as a medicinal marijuana product or set of products. Glenn, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to say that you touched upon some important things in your presentation. First aspect is you're talking about the Jamaica research that has spoken to the prevalence of early usage among children. I think we've also have similar findings in Barbados. 5, 6, 7 years children are using to go to school. You haven't used it and whatnot. And there have been some people who try to make them to be invalid comparison between marijuana and rum. I remember as a little boy, my friends would tell me, you probably would have been exposed to it, MAXINE, and maybe even Ferdy. Your parents would, at Christmas or some special occasion, would give you a taste on your tongue, as they would say, for the worms. For the worms, but neither me nor any of my friends had ever gone to school drunk or had some coming. No, it was no. And the benefit of that was that you were not therefore intrigued by any special, because you get it was not forbidden, so there was no enticement, and therefore when we got to the age where we could drink, it was just part of life. It was not a big thing. And the other thing, Maxine, too, you talk about your experience at the beach with those youngsters, and that is another matter. All my friends have complained to me when they go public spaces, wherever that people smoke freely, openly, voluminously, to people's dissatisfaction and discomfort, people who have allergies, etc. No, but there's also, they make no apologies for it. They're not discreet. They don't take other people's feelings, public medical situation into consideration. And it made me remember that the question of law, the law prohibits smoking. This was a battle that was fought by Dr. Tony Gale. And I had to drive down the usage of tobacco in Barbados across the world. He launched for many years fought for anti-smoking. And the law prohibits smoking in public. Smoking, I don't think it talks about smoking of tobacco. I don't think it specifies smoking of what. So therefore, when people go in public and smoke like that, anything they're smoking is breaking the law. And when I went to school in August on Saturdays, they did not deal with law. But to me, common sense tells me that is an offense. And that people have, and even if you go to a restaurant, you're prohibited from smoking in enclosed space. So all those things are, if those things are not tackled after it then becomes usage, and then it's like the minibus culture. You decide, well, maybe it's too late, too far gone.
Yeah. ALWYN, you wanted to jump in there and
Yes,
make a comment?
Yes, quickly. We start to think about legalizing or putting things in place that we see on the wider world, but we somehow don't put systems in place for control. Like, for instance, in Canada, there are marijuana shops, and these were set up, which gives Canadian adults a safer and a regulated alternative outside the illicit market. We have not set those kind of things in place. What will happen sooner than later is that we may see persons turn up at the hospital with marijuana intoxication. How do we treat that? And then we can see a dependency on cannabis.
I wanna speak to the comment that Vihoy has here. She says you're concerned about marijuana, be concerned about alcohol, which is highly addictive, the crack, trunk, etc. And I want to share a personal experience. The first grandchild in my family, who happens to be 7 years younger than me, was, I would say, to a large extent destroyed by something that they call blackies. And that is the putting of crack cocaine into marijuana. Right? And he was never the same again. You try to get off of it and so on. And the concern is that people go and they consume marijuana. And so this probably opens up a bigger discussion, which ties in with what ALWYN just said about the control of the substance for recreational purposes. A lot of people do not know what they're getting. They are getting marijuana mixed with all kinds of chemicals, mixed with other addictive, highly addictive drugs that people see it as a gateway. And I also draw a distinction. I've never tried it. I remember as a student in America, people couldn't understand how this woman from the Caribbean never used marijuana. I said, I've never had an interest. But I have seen a number of things happen locally and internationally. People concerned about alcohol, which is highly addictive. And I would say this, we have a population of very heavy drinkers in this country. I would also say we also need to do the research outside of persons who have become alcoholics, because I would want to know what has happened to persons who are heavy users of marijuana, how it impacts their bodies and another addictive substances, because we are seeing the increasing use of other kinds of substances. But I also will tell you there's something that happens. And again, I have seen examples of this. And I asked the question, there are two questions I asked. I once asked it of a pediatrician who had indicated to me that this is something that would need to be researched. But my question is, what is the impact of heavy marijuana use, either by one or both parents, on babies and young children, newborn babies and children, and young children? Because I've seen some things which suggest to me that there perhaps is, based on anecdotal evidence, let me put it that way, and not empirical evidence. That's why I spoke to the pediatrician about it, to find out if we've done any research, that it does impact children or I would say probably as early as, in vitro, before the child is born, fetuses, etc. And that there's certain behaviors that seem to manifest. I don't know what percentage, what was the incidence of something like this, what percentage of children may be affected, and how, what are the factors beyond perhaps frequent marijuana use. But my thing is that we need to study more closely what is happening. As I said, I've shared a couple examples of what's happening in Jamaica. My understanding, again, the professionals will have to come and confirm or otherwise, that because children 12 and under, their brains and so on are still developing, the impact of marijuana use will have significant and perhaps even different kinds of effects on other persons. And I would say this in the case of people who suffer from chemical imbalances and manifest in bipolarism and so on. I can tell you that I know of cases where those young people, because of the genetic makeup, for want of a better word, had extreme reactions to marijuana use. So it is, there are a lot of issues we need to hear about.
I want to say this, while I appreciate the comment that was made in terms of the comparison between, or the concern for marijuana and not concern for rum, I think we need to be concerned about the abuse of any substance. I think people need to get out of this mode of one opposed, against the other. We need to be careful of substances that are dangerous to you if they are used. I once heard a preacher, I think you all might have heard of him, Miles Monroe. He made a statement that abuse is the abnormal use of a thing. That's what abuse means. In other words, you can abuse anything by virtue of the fact that you don't use it for the purpose for which it is there for. All right. On the basis of what you all are sharing, I was doing some research while you were speaking, and my research shows that if a pregnant woman uses marijuana, that the THC crosses the placenta and reaches the developing fetus. And as a result of that, you get low birth rates, poor attention and memory development, delayed cognitive and motor skills, increased risk of behavioral problems, and possible increased risk of mental health issues. That is in terms of the pregnant mother using it. And then they go on to make the fact. These are facts. Early childhood exposure. You have through either unintentional ingestion, which of course is through edibles. I think we mentioned that a little earlier. I think Maxine, you mentioned something to do about a sweet.
I think they call them brownies too. There's something called
Yes,
brownies.
something called brownies.
Right.
They say that the effects are lethargy or extreme drowsiness. This is on children up to 10 years old. Breathing problems, seizures, and coma in rare cases. Even secondhand smoke is capable of having an effect where brain development is concerned, lung health, and behavior. They become more irritable, and then you have attention problems. Then in terms of the adolescent use, that is between the ages of 10 and 18, which they say, and you alluded to it just now, Maxine, the aspect of the high risk period when the brain is still developing. And they say that in that context, its use can impair learning and memory, lower academic performance, increase risk of depression, anxiety, and psychosis, change brain structure, and result in a higher risk of addiction. Now, I was going to go to.
Can I have one quick comment further before you do?
Just one sec. I was going to go to the matter of the land conflict that we have brewing, and the aspect of the educational decline in Barbados was going to follow, but I think I'll just go straight to the aspect of education.
Yeah.
Since we are discussing this matter and the impact it's having on children. And obviously, as I'm sure all of you all know, we have had a declining performance rate in terms of our educational system in Barbados. And I don't know if the authorities have done any research to try to identify the rationale for that. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I just on the question of marijuana, there were frequent references mentioned made about the development of the brain. It has been established scientifically a person's brain is in a stage of development until about the age of 20. So anything happening in that interval can impact negatively the development, the physiological and other development of the brain. On the other hand, I hate these. I do not appreciate those people who try to deflect when you're trying to analyze and deal with a new phenomenon, which called marijuana use is still a relatively new phenomenon in Barbados. They bring it in, they try to deflect by bringing rum. We have had a cultural exposure to rum over centuries. We understand the impact of rum because of usage and long association, experience, observation better than we do in marijuana. On the other hand, when person drinks rum, most people, there's usually a smell after a while if you use it. So they're triggers, they're detections. But there are people who can use marijuana and there might not be any smell. There'll be signs in their eyes. When what about the question of driving under the influence of marijuana? Are they driving under the influence of alcohol? So all these are new aspects of national life that we have to pay attention to so that we can be able to manage this process and this development in the best way possible.
Sorry, I was just trying to read some of the comments here that folk are putting in, and maybe we can take a look at a few of them. Here is this is Tayo saying that there was a study done by Stanford University, I believe, that verifies what you theorize, not made publicly available, but one of the reasons why ganja is now decriminalized. I observed as well. This one says it results in a shrinking of the male organs and producing excessive estrogen, wondering why men are going soft in many ways. So again, you're dealing with our, we're big people, I hope, right? We're dealing with erectile dysfunction in that context. They're covering a number of things here. I think you raised this aspect, Maxine. They're contaminating the drug by adding other drugs and calling it medical marijuana. Somebody had posted in terms of it had been legalized in Canada for years now, but in truth and in fact, it was legalized in Canada in 2018. And that's not so. Sorry, go ahead, Maxine.
That's not so long ago. No, I think that's the reason why it is very important that we have more research done on so many fronts. Because even if I start with the comment that VHOI has here, that is they've contaminated by other drugs and calling it medicinal marijuana. But the other thing, and again, you see, I know of a young man who left here and went to Canada and had I would have to call it a psychotic brain on I would have to get a clarification from persons connected to him. But from what I understood, the young man smoked marijuana here, but because it was probably illegal when he left here, access to it was not the same as when he went to Canada. Because it was available, and because I think things to do with potency and all of these things impacted on him. So he was able to get it freely and probably enjoy, and abused it. Let me put it that way, in the same way we talk about alcoholics abusing, alcohol and so on. Adrian Hines is correct. If pregnant women drink alcohol and smoke.
Yes.
Smoking tends to lead to complications, to underweight babies and so on. And so all of these things, and it is for people to be educated about these. I think some people will say, well, marijuana is a plant, but the truth is rum made from sugarcane.
It's a plant.
But all of these things can have differential impacts on your body. Some people seem to be able to, So I think at the end of the day, as you correctly say, Pastor Ferdinand, the issue of substance abuse, the essence of abuse of anything, and and things that are addictive or cause people to become addicted to them. These are issues that we have to look at. But for me, when we talk about education now, my question is, what is the impact on our children if they are exposed to the use of any of these substances too early? I mean, because it now is going to compound some of the other concerns, because I think there was a very specific reason why you wanted to touch on educational issues tonight. But this certainly is something that's going to compound it, because we talk about actual use, but and remember, you talked about in the same way that side stream smoke from tobacco smokers was problematic for non-smokers. Contact highs are also a reality.
Yeah, but Maxine, I can't recall, because what you just said triggered it in my mind. I read somewhere that there are more deaths from smoking secondhand smoke than from the person actually using the cigarette itself. This was a scientific research done some years ago showing the impact cancerous conditions arising in people who were exposed to the secondhand smoke and so on, which was one of the things that helped led to the restriction of smoking in enclosed environments. You can't smoke inside of an airport.
Right.
You can't smoke inside of a restaurant. You can't smoke inside of any business buildings or offices. You can go out on the sidewalk. You can go out on the areas outside and you can smoke and so on. So I think there needs to be a lot more research done. And I think what I would like to see is more research done relative to our environment within Barbados and within the Caribbean, because I find that while I am appreciative of the research done overseas, at the Johns Hopkins universities and so on, we live in a somewhat different environment. Our cultural experiences are different. Our societal developments are different. And I think we need to start looking
For,
at how these things impact us
for,
here in
for,
Barbados. Go ahead,
for,
Glenn.
yeah, you're right. But there have been enough. There's been enough disclosure by the National Council of Substance Abuse and other agencies, which have clearly said that children 5, 6, 7 have been given information which indicate that they're at home, they're exposed to marijuana from very
Yes.
early its existence and its usage by itself and people in the family. So it is clearly a part of national life in certain circumstances. So therefore, so we don't need to reinvent it in that regard. And
Okay.
one has to wonder what impact this has when children go to school and their behaviors. They want to fight, they're aggressive, they're sleepy, because they might have been innocently exposed to it, and it triggers certain reaction. And then to not all marijuana in this world, and in the same way there's trade in guns, there's trade in marijuana internationally. And people in the illegal or drug abuse world, they're looking for what they call new highs, better highs, and they're persons who go into labs. So not all marijuana in this world, when you see in Canada and North America, where they have the marijuana shops which are legal, is growing naturally. They're growing in labs, right? And there are people who experiment to look for the latest high, because it's a business. If you get the latest high, you create a demand for that because you get a longer lasting on you high.
Yeah.
And that is where the intervention, the intrusion of substances to create the high, that sometimes come to harm people and cause the damage and death for one. So it's a complex situation. Not all so-called marijuana is one growing naturally in the ground. Some of it is created in labs like other things.
Right. And of course,
I mean, a question, Pastor Ferdinand, as I read Adrian Hines' comments and some of the earlier comments.
I was actually just about to draw that to our attention.
Where he said medicinal marijuana is supposed to have a lower levels of THC, and that is all. And that is part of what I understand. But I saw an earlier comment where people make the comparisons and contrast with alcohol, for example, and then highlight the problems with other more serious drugs. My question to the audience: what is your position on the use of marijuana, full stop. That is what I would want to hear from people. We know that it is used, but what is your position? And there was my last point is in relation to the person, I think it was V. Hoy who mentioned that when business people realized that they could make money from it, I guess it is something to which they paid attention and acted upon. But I also remember, because I'm thinking of the industry in the region, and I remember because we know that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for years, even though it was illegal, it was cultivated. And I remember the comment of a former diplomat from St. Vincent and Grenadines making the point that perhaps the country was making money from it because it was illegal. But from the time it becomes illegal and you compete with those larger foreign countries doing it, you probably will see a different situation. And that perhaps explains, because right now, as much as the government has spent millions of dollars supporting what they have described as a medicinal marijuana industry, those businesses cannot use commercial banks or other financial institutions per se. A similar problem, because it continues to be illegal in certain states, rather, not
Right,
cities,
that's right.
certain states in the US. And banking, even for those states where they can legally operate these shops, etc., people largely do business in cash. So I don't see a short-term end to that. And my question, therefore, is, and I think I heard somebody speaking on behalf of the government talking about engaging some other financial institutions outside of the Western world. But the reality is we have had a challenge with correspondent banking, that is with those banks with whom we have to interface to do international transactions. And that is not going to change soon. And therefore, I think it is going to create a problem. And therefore, another problem that we may have is that you may find yourself having to deal in some funny waters when it comes to money transactions.
Yeah.
Freddie,
But the thing is, just hold a minute, GLYN.
no
The
problem.
thing is, panel, in terms of and I don't want to necessarily shift clear across, because I realize that there is a link between the educational decline and the use. And here's the thought going through my mind. While we're talking about medicinal use and medicinal production, it would appear to me that the Barbadian public is not using medicinally at all. I
Right.
mean, if you're talking medicinal, you're talking medical, you're talking doctors, hospitals, and so on. But the Barbadian culture, the Barbadian populace, particularly among the younger people, are just using it. And when I look at the statistical evidence, when I look at the facts and see the impacts that it can have on adolescents, and as you said, GLYN, I think it's up to 20, you said 20
Yeah,
or
up to 20.
21 years old, the brain is still developing. When you look at these things, and I want to play a video here just for a moment as well, right after your comment, GLYN, we can see significant risks, and while it's like people are trying to legitimize the use of something that factually has been shown, just like alcohol, to be destructive. Alcohol, you can't legitimize the use of alcohol in my mind at all, period. And I'm not going to legitimize the use of marijuana or any mind altering drugs, or drugs that can have such an impact upon a human individual, right? So, and I remember, GLYN, years ago, when I used to have a bad cold or flu, my mother would use a teaspoon of cognac, Hennessy, brandy in.
Brandy, that's right.
That is
Right.
what it was. She never used the rum. She used the only thing I know rum was used for in our house was the grape cake fruit, to set the grape cake fruit every year. We had two huge bottles that my father, my mother, I was one in children. I had to grind them fruits, and I didn't like it because the first thing that the fruits didn't taste good. They had all the bitter this and bitter that and all that foolishness, and I had to grind all of that, then put it into the bottles, and then Dad would add the rum to it, and it would ferment for the entire year before it's for the great cake use. But I think we need to pay attention to the impacts any of these things are having from an abusive standpoint. And I believe that we can only caution and warn people and inform people about these things, and leave it up to the individual to make the decision. Go ahead, GLYN, and I'm just going to
Yeah,
put the
yeah.
video up here.
I just want to say that people have been seeking to glamorize marijuana. It is natural from God. It gives you creativity, great imagination. You can write, you can create. Okay, I said fine. Like I hinted at earlier, show me a society, show me a group in the Caribbean or Israel that has had this prolonged, widespread use of marijuana. Show me how they have prospered. Show me how their education has improved. Show me how their productivity is, what factories, what creation they've come. Show me how they've made themselves more wealthy by usage, not by people who are selling it, and then I would take it seriously. So I'm not. So Jamaica probably has the longest prolonged use of marijuana in the Caribbean. What has it done for Jamaica as a nation? Has it made it more Has it made it more wealthy? Has it been able to counteract the ill effect of the prolonged IMF programs in Jamaica all the years? So Barbados is the same. So they're trying to, like I said, deflect it. But when you look at the bare bones of it, like you said, like the effects are lethargy, lack of energy, lack of focus. How can you focus in the world of education or work if you have those ill effects on your mind, body, and spirit?
We should not move them on to high school.
Right. I'm
not
just
being able to read.
okay. I'm just trying to pull up that video that we can listen to. Um,
You
I'm
want an
still
education?
learning. I'm still learning all of this, because Dave is not on with me tonight. So,
What? You've been doing well, man. I'm proud of you.
so let me see if I
You
can.
just had it there, You
Let
just
me
had
see
it
if
there.
I
He
can
had it, he
add
had
it
it there.
here.
It's on education, yes.
In all the subject areas.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Are you all hearing it then?
Yeah.
Yes, so
Okay.
far.
I
Start
don't
it.
know.
I think you paused it. I think it seemed to be paused. So
Right. Okay. So let me just back up. I unfortunately don't know how to make it bigger, but I think it's more important for us to hear what is being said
Right.
about the education system. I suspect on the basis of the accents that this is Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 and 4. We should not move
Volume.
them on to high school not being able to read.
I have it
They
up
may
to
not
all.
be proficient in all the subject areas at PEP, but they must be able to read. And that's the hard stop.
It's not by accident the spotlight is on the youngest learners.
I can see having students repeat grades at a lower level at a younger age in the primary sector being far more impactful. It tends to have longer lasting impacts. The children are younger. You tend to find that they have far more resilience and bounce back. At the secondary level, it doesn't work quite as well. The gains, research is showing it is mixed, but the gains are usually shorter lasting. You're also looking at the fact that you will now have 18, 19-year-olds with 12-year-olds on the same campus and all the dynamics that brings socially. Dropout rates are also higher when you have children being retained at the secondary level.
Experts argue the goal is to create a more even playing field so no child gets left behind.
It is a good transformation of the education system where this attitude of dunce and you just slow, you will make it in regular school is not going to happen anymore because the school is going to be more equipped, more understanding, and the parents are going to be more understanding. There have been cases where parents are asked to repeat a child and they say no, they resist it, thinking that their child is going to be ostracized as a result of that. And so what this does, it creates a more even keel for children.
But how feasible is this move?
When we look at last year's data for the National Literacy Test, we had 4.7% of the kids who did not master, non-mastery. That amounted to about 1,600 kids, right? When we look at the number of schools, we had about 452 schools that those students were in. So you would see that there are small numbers within each school. The largest number we saw in a school was 23. Right? So we realized that we could take that decision. So it's like a big disruption.
Kerry and Simpson, TVJ News.
We take another break. More local stories when we return.
Right. That is the video in terms of they're looking at the declining processes in Jamaica and so on. And I believe that we have to look at a number of different perspectives when it comes to the whole aspect of education. I personally feel that the use of any form of drug of substance is impacting our children's capability of learning and focusing. And it might sound crazy, and if it sounds crazy, I guess it would fit well with me. But technology is technology capable of being abused?
I can say yes as a teacher.
In other words, Alwyn, the same way, not necessarily the same effects, but the same way any other substance can be used, or can be abused in terms of use. Is it possible that our children, along with things like drugs, along with things like parental involvement and facing realities and so on, is it possible that their technological addiction is affecting their performances in their classrooms and that type of thing?
I can say that what I have noticed that it's affected their writing skills, the skill of writing and writing properly and forming letters. That has since COVID. There has been a struggle with the high usage of technology. Children no longer write. Then, in terms of phrasing, they tend to use or not. They don't use. They are confusing the use of proper English with abbreviations, and you see it in compositions. So that is what technology has done to this generation. And instead of using the technology as a support mechanism, it is now a dependency.
And the reason I brought that in is because to me, I feel that we need to engage in the broader view of things as well. In other words, sometimes we just focus on like marijuana or rum or so on, but we have so many components, to my mind, that are being abused in the lives of our children. It could very well be even video games and some of these what you call them, these videos that the little children now watch on TV with all this stuff that's going on and so on. I just want us to give consideration to those broader aspects that could be affecting the developmental aspect of the child and by extension their educational performance. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I'm glad you. First of all we talk about technology. Mankind has always had some form of technology. One day I will do a program on that. From when he first made his first tools out of rocks, they had iron and glass, printing, all those are technologies which men invented to make life better for them. So we've always have. This is not the first area of technology. The printing press, the internal combustion, all those are manifestations of technology. But what has happened, and I only last week I was listening to the BBC and also some English news. England is now going back to paper and pencil and chalk. They have found, like you said, ALWYN, that you've probably heard me talk about the benefits of early stimulation. You talk about the same way a child in its mother's womb can suffer from the ill effects of drugs, smoking. Okay? A child can benefit from stimulation, from hearing voices, music, being writer. So the earlier the child is stimulated, the better, because the life is based on stimulation and response. So what they have found in England now is that through COVID and war, through the adoption of technology, tablets and computers and all that, like Alwyn said, when a child, and I know it from my own personal experience, my children deal with other people's children. When I taught my children, when my children were taught with a chalk to form the letter O, right? That was in true. But then when they put the hook on it to make it A, because when you write, it involves your body, your brain, and all is core. You learn. The reason why they can't write cursive and stuff now is because you don't get that on the tablets done for it. It's intellectual and physiological
in your brain.
laziness. And
Yeah.
you've heard me talk before that Steve Jobs and those fellas, Steve Jobs forbade his children to use tablets until they were 16, and then they had half an hour a day because it robbed them of that early physics stimulation of the mind and body. And so when a child goes to school and has not held a pencil or a piece of chalk or thing, it's at a severe disadvantage because a teacher doesn't have time to. Those are the basic things that parents themselves can teach their children at home. But then I was told by some teachers, one of the reasons why it's not happening is that some parents themselves cannot read or write, so therefore they are not capable of teaching their children. But I'm saying that in the same way we have community nurses and community health, we should have people who could, through the social service, go to a house and examine the house. And if their parents can't read or write, teach them, give them kind of exposure to get them past the hurdle. Otherwise, it will always be reflected in the lives and achievement of their children. And one last thing, Ferdy. I think we have to go back to appreciate that education is not about fun. This idea your school must be fun. Learning can be satisfying, is to be satisfying. You get pleasure and quote unquote fun out of achieving something. Or probably you can get done, but you say, I got it. That not that you must be laughing and having and making lighthearted. We have to go back to excellence. Excellence in education is not to be determined bourgeois and poor grade and elitist and colonial. Those are the building blocks of any society. And once we get rid of this phobia, this false narrative, that the colonial system and anything that flowed from it was wrong for Barbados. Even in those days, people when I went to the days of colony, but there were people who left Barbados, seven standard boys. I went to university and did well. Those men can learn Greek and Latin, could speak it and write it. So there is an inherent, the point I made, there's an inherent benefit in being educated, period. And that is not to be left to some people. It's not meant to be a punishment. It's part of a natural phase of your life.
Yeah. I want to take some of these comments, Maxine, to answer the question you asked. You asked a question about, I would imagine of the loyal opposition, if they agree or disagree. Well, I'm looking at some of them here. This is Angela Eunice. She said, it's not my thing. It's not my thing. Never used. Just going down a few here. This is Charles Atkins. I think that any right-thinking person has to agree marijuana should never be a daily multiple-use product. However, I would much prefer to be trying to solve poverty in poor Black people. This is Kent Lee McCollin, definitely against recreational usage. Paul Messiah, medical marijuana and medical alcohol. I'm not too sure. Now, medical alcohol sounds like out in the Western days when you got shot and they used to use it to sterilize the thing. Then Angela Eunice Knight, we have to look at the economics of cannabis. Adrian Hines, he says, I don't like smoking or smokers, but I will partake in alcoholic beverage. I'm fine with the banning of the use of any smoke products in public. Kentley again, medical, yes, but I am against recreational use. Judith Ann Clark, she says, this was my understanding as well. Medical marijuana carries a much lower level of THC. I went to seminar EWB, that would be the Errol Walton Barrow Center at the UWI, where she would have heard with that. Just looking at, let me just take a couple others. Marva Hines, I think that heavy marijuana use is dangerous. V. Hoy says, I can't agree to any drugs. I know how they impact individuals and families. I know how it destroys societies. And I believe that we would have an interesting debate and discussion, let me say, for the pros and the cons. But as I said, anything can be abused.
Yeah,
Um, and it's important to uh, establish the use of something. I know that there are, I don't even know, but you all remember fat porks? Is that what they used
yes,
to call it? Fat porks that you used to find by the beach?
yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing with the white flesh.
Yeah, I never found, I didn't particularly like it. I didn't have any taste, but my father used to stuff it in us. But I never knew what benefit it is. So I don't know if it has kept me from developing things or whatever. And then there was that, what was that we used to get with the big seed in the top again? Fat
Cashews,
cashew.
cashew.
Cashews.
Right, right. All of these things, I believe, you can take mangoes and abuse them. You can take plums and you can take a blender and abuse it. So I think that we really need to pay attention to
This
the use and the abuse of things. I think that is an important perspective to have. Well,
one quick comment, Freddie. You mentioned brandy. I'll tell you, brandy. One of the reasons why your parents would give back brandy is regarded, from my knowledge, from my research and information, as one of the most potent stimuli. So the reason if somebody's feeling low or poorly, the reason why they would be fed a bit of brandy is to help to revive this. It would have a positive impact on your body and your mood, etc. That's the reason. So there's science type, from what I recall,
yeah,
to the use of brandy. But I'd like to get back to education if you can.
I wanted to speak, if I could, Ferdy, to your question about the technology being abused, and I would say the challenges or the limitations or weaknesses of technology. And while Glenn was speaking about the UK, I went to verify some information I know I had come across before, because we in this part of the world like to follow. And it happens because some of these Western countries and so on have the financial resources to stay ahead of the game, so to speak. But Sweden, and we talk about
Right.
Sweden as one of those economies. And I'll read what some of the information that came up. And as you said, technology helps you to pull up some detailed information in seconds. And it says, because I had seen this before, Sweden
Yeah.
is shifting its educational approach
Yes,
to a more traditional back to basics model,
yep,
emphasizing printed books, handwriting practice, which brings
yep,
you to what ALWYN was saying, and
mhm,
reduce reliance on digital devices. This change is a response to concerns about declining reading comprehension and focus among students, despite Sweden's previous embrace of digital learning, including the widespread use of tablets in schools. So the key elements of the shift, they're reintroducing printed textbooks, as I said, focusing on handwriting and reading. They're saying there's what they call a balanced approach to technology, is not to eliminate technology, but to ensure that the digital tools enhance rather than dominate learning. And then
yes,
they talk
yes,
about teacher expertise and so on. And they said they're declining, the distractions, impact on fine motor skills, need for a balanced approach, etc. So I think what we are seeing is what other countries, because they were a step or steps ahead of us, are now seeking to address the very things that are manifesting themselves. But outside of technology, I think that our system, we need to focus on the foundational things, making sure that people can reason, they can write, they have certain numeracy skills, etc. And then we can start to so the video, because we haven't touched on that, the video in Jamaica, they're saying, look, we cannot leave students behind. And the irony about leaving students behind is a situation where people may continue to be promoted and ignored because they are not functioning at the requisite level. So they are saying that you may have to have students repeat certain class, you know, at certain stay in the
Yeah,
class
yeah.
rather than be. And
But
so I think this is something we have to look at. Alwyn, I don't know if you were trying to
but
say
that's
Yeah,
something.
but that's that's not new
we are
though,
finished, yes.
Maxine and Alwyn. I mean, at Harrison College, I remember going through Harrison College. There was one segment, one class segment where I actually had to stay down in that class, and so it's something that's not, to my mind, unusual
How
in that
often are we
aspect.
doing it now, though? And I guess
Yeah,
Alwyn,
well,
you could help us.
Alwyn would
I
probably
want
be
to,
able to
yeah,
shed
I
light
want,
on that.
let me share that because they leaving no student behind and they're repeating so that they get a grasp of, let's for instance, they were in second form and you want them to, and they have not, and they have failed second form miserably. So you want to repeat them. But what I have seen is that they are kept back in some instances, but they feel even worse. So I am
Oh,
saying systems have to be in place where those students who are kept back because they have failed that second year segment is that they have to be specially tutored, and we're not
okay.
doing that because of the pressure, especially in secondary schools. You pull in students from primary school with low English and math marks, and the secondary school teachers, that's the newer secondary school teachers, are still competing with Harrison College and the Queen's College to get them ready at the same time for CXC exams.
CXC exams, yeah.
And I'm
Uh,
saying that if anybody has to stay in school longer, is those children who start at a lower end of this 11 plus exam.
Right.
So
This is where
But my
it's not about keeping them back, but
no,
making sure that they
sure that
have
they grasp.
appropriate
Yes.
instruction and
the,
assistance to
Ferdy,
address their particular challenges.
yeah,
yeah,
if
yeah,
talk about being kept back. When it was a Cormier, we had the same, I think 3 year or for alpha
Remove.
remove, right, right,
That's a
and that was
terrible
supposed.
thing.
But there were some people who went through that system and excelled. One of the people who went into that system, believe it or not, was the late Dean Harold Critchlow. He fell into that for some reason, and then he came out of it, and then became a very strong academic intellect. So, but you have to take them, have a system, prepare to, they will not get off their own,
facilitate
to
that.
get,
Yeah.
facilitate, to make that, and both him and a number of other persons who went through it came out much better off than who do great in other areas. So it can be done, it has been done, but it will not happen by itself. It has to be programmed.
But the
And
Agree.
the last thing about the technology, you have to, and education is that technology is a business. Business when a lot of the technology that's being sold to us in programming is a deliberate probably on behalf of the developer to sell their goods and services. They make the money, right? So they will come and make unconventional. You need to get this, you get the other, be left behind, and then you Martin Ray, is not necessary. Then remember, I probably made reference for this today already in a previous program. When remember the big ballyhoo, much ballyhoo, year 2000. Remember when the year 2000 it was supposed to confuse technology and things would come to halt and that would function. I remember the people came from the United States to want to us all kind of programs that would monitor the computers at the police and the fire service, the airport, the hospital. And you need it was a mania. I'm Prime Minister asked us to set up a committee. I was the chairman and the late Darcy Boys was the vice chairman. And when we looked at it, he said, this is people trying to hoodwink you. They want to sell you all kind of $1 million equipment. And when you look at we said, your watch changes at 9 to 10, 11, 12, and nothing happened. It is just a machine that will change a date like any other machine, and nothing will happen. So we never spent a cent. We just monitored, had a committee. But so if you don't have it, they will sell you things, just like they went to Africa and so on, parts of the world, selling guns and dynamite and gunpowder. That is they are making money. If you fall for it,
it's money. At
it's
the end of the
money.
day, it's money. At the end of the day, it's money. But listen, guys, I just want to make one closing comment on this aspect because I want to move to the next subject. We're a little behind time on it, but going through my mind, Maxine, GLYN, ALWYN, is the source of the children's challenge in terms of their learning. Okay, they're not learning in the class, and they have to stay down. But are we looking, Alwyn, and just for a quick comment from you, in terms of, you're on the ground with it, but are we looking at some of the sources that would be contributing to a child not being able to succeed? And I'm trying to choose my words carefully. Succeed in moving from one class to the other, because okay, substance abuse may be contributory. What about things like in-house environment? What about things like parental involvement? What about
Right.
things like a person who may be more focused on a skill rather than on the academic aspect? Um, you know, just very quickly, because I want to move to the next thing.
I
What
think
about
I
any
think
sorts of things?
I think that within any educational reform or transformation program that we may adopt, we need to look at the not the high flyers. The high flyers will always, the
Yeah,
cream will
always.
always
Yeah.
come to the top.
Hmm.
Any education reform or transformation program or will have to take into consideration those persons who are at the bottom, who are taking a little longer to get through. I don't think that today in our school system, because of the pace at which we are asked to produce um, students for CSC passes, that we have enough time or personnel within the school, because a teacher within an English class who has a class of 20, 25 students to teach finds it difficult to, to slow down a bit to accommodate another five. That is his problem. So we may have to look at additional teachers within our school system who caters to the needs of those slow, who we call slow learners, or people who are taking a little longer than the
Hmm.
average child to get ahead.
Right.
Right. And identifying the reasons, and trying to address those reasons and so on. Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Uh,
if I may make one quick comment on
real,
that,
real fast, because I
real
want to move
fast.
to the next one
That's a
here.
good point. I was making, because this we need to be able to provide for private, so-called private lessons.
Yes.
People are
Yes.
very friendly.
We used
We
to
have to
benefit
create
from
our
that.
own internal system, what might be considered private, and build into the system that process, that structure that will help bring those children along. Because some of the differences we actually do well at CX or 11 plus, is because of the private tuition they get from home. We must make it private, public, so that they too cover the basis. And I will never feel good about Barbados again until I know we've virtually eliminated illiteracy. We should never be satisfied with illiteracy at any level at all. We've done too well in education in the past to fall to that level again.
Right. Well, listen, I mean, these are all subjects that could take an entire program on their own. That's the honest truth. And I know, Marcia is trying to cover a number of areas, but I think these are two integrated components. The whole aspect of abuse, whether we deal with it from alcohol or otherwise, and the educational system that we're facing with. But um, gentlemen and lady, I want to move to the next discussion. We're a little behind time, so I hope we'll try and get through all of them. This one has to do with something we raised a couple of nights ago, to do with this land in St. John. Oh dear. Glenn, already tonight you talked about, and myself, both of us talked about this divesting of over $200 million of
Not
property
not divesting, giving away.
given away. All
Forget the
right, thank
fancy
you for the
term, give
correction. Thank
away.
you.
Right,
Giving away the 200 million, and that is at the value now. And obviously, if you construct on it anything, that
right,
value is going to go up. So we don't even really know the value of that property that was given away. We only know its value on the basis of per square footage and the area it's located in. But nobody knows right now, when it's completed, in terms of construction and whatnot, what that could rise to. But we have this situation that occurred in St. John, and with the government selling, or seeking to sell, to I think it's a Wesleyan church, a plot of property in St. John. I believe the figure was $28,000. And I remember, I think it was on Wednesday that myself and Marcia shared the show. We touched on this, but then after we finished the show, there was an article done by Antoinette Connell of the Nation News, and this was done. I was just trying to see if I could find the date.
Last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago.
Yeah, I think it was Sunday, the 3rd of August, which
Right.
is just yesterday.
Yes.
Right.
Just yesterday.
Yes,
I'm
yesterday's
going
paper.
to see if I can pull it up on the screen. If you just give me a moment. I know you all have it all with you, but I want the people to also see what we're engaging. But it now seems that the Anglican Church, or should I say the Anglican diocese trustees, have been brought into the equation because this article was carried in the Nation yesterday, in which the Barbados diocesan trustees are saying that the property that the government is seeking to divest of to the Wesleyan Church does not belong to the government. I know you all would have had a opportunity to review the information that I sent out to you, and I think Maxine, you mentioned that I believe you were the first female. Is that right?
Trustee for five
You were the
years. I
first
was a
female
trustee.
trustee on
Trustee
the
of the Anglican Church in Barbados. So I
right,
know a little bit about property of the church and so
right,
on.
right.
So I've
So
seen it.
here we have the chairman, Adrian Elcock, who confirmed that his lawyer has sent the trustees, that is, the lawyer of the trustees has sent a letter to the permanent secretary with regards to this. When one takes into account, um, panel, what has happened at Gemma's Lane, how do we deal with this? I want to say it's minuscule in terms of the value, but obviously there seems to be some conflict going on here. Maxine, I'm going to give you first. Go
I
at
can go
this.
first. I
I'll
will
give
be
you.
bold and
Go
go
ahead.
first. And
Yeah,
I was
please.
I actually tried just well while you were speaking to Glenn because I didn't get a chance earlier to listen to Minister Sutherland who presented the resolution in Parliament.
Mhm.
And I would ask Mr. Sutherland to demonstrate to me. I heard him make some references that the government in fact owns this land. So before we even can compare and think about government giving away land that belongs to them, I would say the government would need to prove to me that they own the land. And I don't have a lot of time to go into it, but once you do the research and understand, and I noticed there's a reference to the Anglican Church Act, but that I recommend people go to read it. But at the end of the day, the critical thing that government has to establish is that they own the land in the first instance. And one of the things that you would find is that the Anglican Church, through a process of receiving gifts, etc., because he made reference to a plantation owner and all of these things, which I don't have time to go into now, but I would tell you that I would further research it, that a lot of times lands would have been gifted to the church, some of it would have been acquired by the church, and the church used some of those lands to create a series of schools. So, for example, and a lot of them you would hear about St. Bartholomew's School, St. Stephen's School, Junior, and that's where I went to school, for example. A lot of those would have been built on school lands because I think it would have been Bishop Coleridge. I mean, the church has a history connected to slavery, of course, and then another part of the history was an effort to seek to educate blacks through the establishment of schools, etc. And so these schools would have been part of the church and the diocese, and then they became, when the government of the country took over education, etc., they utilized these school properties. I make reference to that to indicate that for the most part, in fact, you would generally find that In fact, government ended up at some point continuing to use in recent times 14 of those school buildings and returning other buildings which they no longer needed to use to the diocese. I'll give an example. St. Stephen's. When I was a school girl, when I was 10, when I was 5, between 5 and 10, I went to St. Stephen's Infants and St. Stephen's Junior. Those two buildings were owned by the church, and when the government, and there's a whole process we won't go through with disestablishment and so on, but I'm not going to confuse people with that. When the government handed back those properties, they not only handed them back, but they also, in some instances, had to pay to try to restore the buildings. But so I would pause there. I don't want to hog the show, but I would say, as a former trustee, I would ask the government to demonstrate to me, based on all that I know, that it has ownership of that land and therefore is in a position to sell it. And I would end by saying that it is not the first time that government would be wrong. We recently had an article in the paper talking about paternity leave coming into effect when in fact there's no legislation to do that. So because government says so does not make it right. I will pause there and speak later if I have some more time.
Well, the thing about it, though, Maxine, is that I mean, as I have read the article out of the Nation, what it appears to me is that there was some discussion proceeding between the trustees and the government.
Mm-hmm.
And it is without a conclusion, without coming to a conclusion. And it would appear to me that in the midst of those efforts, those dialogues, those discussions, which to me is very disingenuous, that the government move forward through an act in Parliament, however they care to I don't know if it's by compulsory acquisition or what, I don't know. But it would appear the government, in the midst of this, without notification or anything, went ahead and started to engage divesting of this property to the Wesleyan Holiness Church. Now, I think we dealt Wednesday with the fair or unfairness of giving away $200 million in land at Gemmis Lane to a bank that is a multi-billion dollar profit-making organization, as compared to a church that has to pay $28,000 and apparently ongoing leasing costs for the property. And it would appear that this is where the issue is. That from what I am reading,
Yes.
would appear that Mr. What's his name again, Mr. Elcock,
Yes.
is
Adrian
raising
Elcock.
this as the issue, and it would seem to me a continuation of how this government continues to not mama guy,
How
to
it does
bully,
business. Right.
how it does business, as if it's trying to bully the whole aspect. Gentlemen, your comments.
I would say that this is a shameful turn of events, because when Barbados were focusing on how unfair it was to ask the church to pay 28,000 when in truth and in fact you were giving away millions to a foreign entity. Here we are now looking at an article which says that in May 9th, a letter that the trustees contend that the Anglican Church was established in 1966, that they were informed by the Anglican Church about this same land, and here you go, still went to Parliament trying to sell that land, which was in dispute, to another entity.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, all right. I have another aspect, a couple of aspects on this. First of all, I think the government appointed 3 spiritual advisors. I haven't really heard more about them since they were appointed. Not only that, there's a minister responsible for religious affairs, Colin Jordan, who himself is a practicing Christian, Seventh-day Adventist faith. Would these things not normally have gone to them or passed through their hand, or they might not have had sight of them, some kind of insight? And therefore, Maxine, you would know what I'm talking about when I'm concerned. Therefore, this indicates a wider problem. You hinted at it just now. The quality of cabinet papers. This would have had to be in a cabinet paper to make it way through the system to get to Parliament. And normally, from my experience, Hawkeyes used to be very careful attention used to be paid to the process of the structure, the information of a cabinet paper before it met cabinet. And if there should have somebody who would, as the cabinet paper was being prepared, and before it got to cabinet, even when it was drafted for a cabinet, before it was be approved to come to cabinet, somebody should have said, wait, we have not had, this thing has not been concluded yet. There's a dispute. What is the government's position? What is the legal advice? For it to make its way through the system, to actually go to Parliament, and there are deficiencies in the process. It makes one wonder, therefore, about the quality of, because I know from experience that if things, one of the benefits of bureaucracy, for those who don't understand how the services used to work, and I understand it's no longer as structured the process as it was back then in our time, where you'd have a cabinet paper which the doc prepared to go to cabinet to deal with a matter of national interest or importance. A junior officer of a junior AO1 or 2 would draft it, then would go to the higher one, then it will pass through the senior, and it goes to the line so that by the time it gets to the cabinet secretary, it has been vetted. And the reason is that there are people with different level of experience who will spot deficiencies and defects before it goes to the whole room. But it seems to me, I'm astounded that the system has been so diluted and destroyed and fractured and ignored that somebody just will go through the system where it is clear that the process was not completed. And if the process were not completed, how come it get the cabinet? And then Maxine said we've had several instances of somebody at cabinet, Minister Jordan, somebody, and normally if he was not the minister, then someone who was presenting the paper, somebody, the prime minister or somebody around the table say, what about this? Have you checked that? And it might be withdrawn, postponed, for that remedial work to be done, to fill that void, then you have a proper, complete document. This has not happened in this case, and it really is quite astonishing.
Well, I mean, even as you read this, the paragraph that's there on the screen, Mr. Elcock said the board was disappointed in the action taken since they became aware that the Minister of Housing was interested in the land to be used by the Wesleyan Church, as it was no longer in use by the Anglican Church. And he says, we indicated that we did not think it was as simple as that. There would need to be some level of understanding as to who was the key owner of the land.
Precisely.
The permanent secretary wrote back outlining their side of the issue. In June, we requested an urgent meeting to attend to that matter, and that meeting has not been forthcoming. And subsequent to that request, the property has been leveled, the church and the school knocked to the ground. And Mr. Elcock said, we find that very distressing when you are under discussion on a matter and one party unilaterally decides to proceed without concluding the discussion. My issue here is that it seems to be the modus operandi of this government, where they go, what's the word, we used to call it again?
Bull rushing?
Yeah, into everything, and they don't seem to have done adequate research. They don't seem to have got together the appropriate information and gathered it together so that they can make an informed decision. But it's like somebody sits down in the night and say, you know what, let's do this, let's do that, and get up the next morning and go about doing it. Then to have to come back and retract or whatever, because that is what is happening now.
But for the
But you see,
you well, quickly, Marcy, you may reference to the permanent secretary writing back, but the way how the system is supposed to work, you could not just take the permanent secretary's word. That should go to the Solicitor General's office or the Attorney General, where the law can help examine to see whether it was enough to just take the word of the part of the ownership of land. Free and unfettered ownership and title, clear title, as they say, would have to be established before it can be disposed of. So the system has either been broken down or maybe the IMF made them fire too many people, so they don't have any people to go through that phase stages, and everything is short-circuited system. But I'm saying the word of a permanent secretary should not be enough unless he had gotten an opinion on the Solicitor General or the Attorney General's office to say, what is the legality of the ownership on this transaction?
Right.
So it's wrong on several fronts.
But
If I'm wrong,
Maxine,
Martin, correct me.
You mentioned something because I'm looking at this paragraph on the screen right now, which I'm sure you can read. You have the information there relative to the aspect of the connection between the church and the plantation. Isn't that something that I'm reading there?
Yeah, but they're
Um,
talking about paying rent to BABB plantation. Now, all of these things, they would need to verify and so on.
Right.
Because exactly. As I said, I'm not comfortable with some of the conclusions that are drawn because based on these things, I know that you have to ensure at the end because they're talking about the 70s and so on and whether these lands. So I would have to do further investigation. My other concern is that we're talking about a piece of land, but they also demolished two buildings.
yes,
They
that's what
demolished
it
two
actually
buildings.
was
So
said. Yeah,
if you go back up there, it says
yeah.
here, and subsequent to that request, the property has been leveled, the
The church
church
and the
and the
school.
school knocked to the ground. So I think, and it's interesting because I while y'all were speaking, because I had printed out the resolution, and I think part of it has to, the question was what they're really looking to use this for. And I think that it was done to provide, it says here, the uh, um, the arrangement, the state sold the land. Let me see to the at a meeting held on 29th, and this is an addendum to the resolution. The resolution basically is approved the lease to the Pilgrim Holiness Church, the Wesleyan Holiness of a parcel of land situated at Bath. It says the property of the state, but the church is going to lease the land, but they want to operate. I think there's a switch in because the church exists somewhere, and I think from what I heard Mr. Sutherland saying, they're switching lands so that they can set up. I think it's a community center. So maybe that explains in part the haste. But all I would say, GLYN has been very clear as to the value of following processes. Bureaucracy is not, as GLYN suggested, a question of inefficiency and time wasting. It is about having processes and procedures that allow you in a very systematic way to establish or to undertake activities. So in this case, establishing ownership and determining once and for all who has the rights, because it is not only that. The question is, how does that piece of land affect other property that may be owned by the church and so on, and how does it impact on what the church may have plans to do or is currently doing on land that may be contiguous to that and so on. So it is not a simple matter. I remember sitting in meetings back in 2005-6, because that's when I was appointed a trustee back in June of 2005. You sent me, Pastor Ferdinand, to my archives, and I was able to see, and I actually remember meeting in November 2005 to discuss the payment for schools used by government and so on. So when we start to talk about schools, I mean, it sends up a red flag for me as to what is the ownership and what are the current or what were the previous arrangements in relation to those buildings and lands. And I wait to hear what the chairman does. I will do my own research as a former trustee. I know the current trustee, and I know members of the synod as well, which is another part of the administration of the church. But the trustees, at the end of the day, they exist to address issues of property of the church. In fact, I will say this. A church cannot on its own undertake to do certain kinds of repairs, or should not undertake to even do repairs to the buildings, because the building is not owned by the parish. It is it is in the care of the trustees. And all of those things are written in legislation. One of these days I will maybe do a presentation. I to speak a bit more on this. And I agree with Vihoy, the church needs to speak out. As a member of the church, and interesting enough, after a number of years, I am now serving on my church council. I'm also the chair of the finance committee at St. Stephen's Church. So I have
you get a big picnic.
but I will say this. I will say this to you, Maxine, GLYN, ALWYN, as a minister, and knowing that there is, whether intentional, true, authentic or not, some kind of an attempt to reach out to the church to assist in all of the issues we are facing on a national basis. This is the height of disrespect of the church. Mr. Elcock states here, I believe an appropriate way to bring a resolution would be to have the lawyers finish their consultation, but it's the next sentence that concerns me. But to go and knock down a sacred property that has been in use by the Anglican community, and then to read the House of Assembly debate carried in the newspaper, that is extremely distressing. I want to say that is extremely disrespectful. Now, regardless of the denominational aspects, I believe the Anglican Church is probably one of the longest standing denominational groupings in the country.
The first.
Right? And has been significantly contributory to the educational development in Barbados. And I find it deeply concerning that if the government is going to act in this manner, what would the government not do? Because you're now dealing with the church, which is respected in the country, regardless of how people feel. It's respected in the country as an entity that contributes to community development, etc., etc. And for the government to act in this manner, to me, is very insulting and very disrespectful. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I spoke so strongly about this matter is that as Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office, religious matters fell under that portfolio.
Yes, he was.
And I had day-to-day responsibility for that. Maxine talked about the restoration of properties, etc., settlement of the Anglican churches. I chaired that process. I was intimately involved in returning buildings or dealing with property belonging to the Anglican Church, the Moravian, all of them that had any connection with the government and their uses by the society. And I remember very well how thorough, how tedious and careful we were to make sure that we dot across our T's to make sure that, because we appreciated the contribution of the churches to Barbados' development. And we treated them with respect and care and to make sure they were properly treated. They were not unfair. And therefore, with a practicing Christian as minister responsible for these affairs, with 2 or 3 spiritual advisors at the behest of government, we thought that this was something we would be covered at all angles, all advice sought and received and given and acted upon. So for this, I don't know why I don't know if they were trying to fulfill a political pledge to somebody in St. John about that, and you're rushing it. This is shoddy. It's an embarrassment. But then we are a republic with no republic constitution, so everything else.
Colleagues, here are my notes, and you can see that they've been around for a little while. These notes.
Paper yellow. Like paper yellow.
It's yellow page. It's a yellow page. It's a yellow notepad. But
no, is it a yellow page or it turned yellow from here?
No, it's a yellow notepad. It's turning pale. But these notes actually are of a meeting with the minister, with the Prime Minister's office. And interestingly, if they want to have some advice, it's interesting. The meeting was, I think he was then permanent secretary. This was the 3rd of the 24th of March, 2006. And the meeting was with the then Mr. Alan Jones, who happened
to be permanent secretary.
I'm a school teacher when I was a child, and who after retiring from government became an Anglican priest.
That's right.
And basically in this note, we were actually discussing the government at the time was occupying 40 schools still and so on. But in my notes, and I wrote this, and it is written here, I'm reading from this line here. I have here written, it is possible to review the files dealing with the entire negotiations. This is about school properties and so on. Mr. and I have in brackets, Sir Neville Osborne was Director of Finance. So this is nothing new. And GLYN will tell you that you probably can find the files.
Of course, if they send out files.
Mr. Neville Osborne at the time was probably dealing with this issue. You see, I don't understand how these latter-day politicians behave. That's the only way I can describe it. At the end of the day, and this is the beautiful thing about our government bureaucracy, you can go back and find critical information if you take the time to do so. Yes. And this would have been GLYN's experience. Certainly was mine, that when certain issues came before me, I always had an interest in history. And that was when, so maybe that is why I found it. But I always found it intriguing when a file that had been around for a long time ended up on my desk, that I could go back. I wasn't just turning to the current. I could go back and read.
It's important.
And get a proper picture. So I would say to these people, maybe Reverend Alan Jones, as I say, former senior public officer and my former Sunday school teacher, who I used to give a little bit of trouble to as a child. And I confess that, Pastor Ferdinand.
That's okay. Confession is good for the soul.
Good for the
soul. So Maxine,
to go and do the research. Yes, sir.
Did he pray for you or pray for you?
I hope he prayed for me, not pray for me.
But I see Lenatel asking, but how do you go and knock down a church building?
Well, you see,
and a school too. It's the same government that took our flag and we watch it going in a grave.
Listen, when you want to do what you want to do, because once the building is knocked down,
that's it.
I mean, they can replace the building, they can do a replica, but it's not knocked down already, the damage is done.
But you see, Maxine, here's the thing. I live in a very, very old home. All right. And there are times I actually thought of contacting the persons responsible for the National Trust or something, because our home is one of those very old three gable homes, which you don't see very much around the country anymore.
Please preserve it.
Well, I tell you, it's going to be a debate between me and the Wood Ants. But nevertheless, I'm thinking about how we can actually do that, Maxine. And this is just my home. This is just, our private dwelling place. But when you look at some of the history of the country, the historic, what was the word I'm looking for? Aristocracy? I can't remember anyhow. I'm used to creating historicity. Yeah, I am used to creating words. I felt that if Webster could do it, there's no reason Ferdinand couldn't. But nevertheless, when I look at the history of the island, where today I can drive around and actually show my grandchildren property and places, this happened here and my mother taught there, and, things of that nature. To just up and knock down what I would call a historical asset to the country, a structure, is very disingenuous, and I find it very disrespectful, and it speaks of a bullying mentality that this government seems to have, that I don't care what you all think, we'll do as you please. So before we move on to the final thing, GLYN, I can give you the last contribution here.
Because I think I haven't been minister responsible for the social service for 9 years. I think from what I'm hearing and what I'm observing is that there's an attitude in this government that what we call the bureaucracy, Maxine, which meant certainty and regularity, and you can have the evenness because of precedence, etc. When those things are invoked, some people think that they come from the colonial pacts. Then they use it. You're slowing me down. You're frustrating me. You find excuses what because it can't be done. And unless you have permanent secretaries or senior officers who are ready to stand their ground professionally and put it in writing their objective, they apparently, from what I'm hearing, tend to comply, some or even retire, because they don't want to be accused or pushed wrong, because they seem to be frustrating and blocking the government. So therefore, that is why the checks and balances that preserve
Yes,
the
yes.
integrity no longer exist, are no longer respected, because like I said, that all of a sudden now, those things that were in the past, particularly when you've come to an IMF program where people have been sent or posts established because they were not seen by North America as being useful. You have a weakness in the system, both attitudinally and structurally, that allows these things to happen.
Right. Like guys, listen, it's just, I don't understand the rush to get things done. Especially when one considers, and I have said this before, when one considers major changes, regardless of how you look at that major change. I see this as a major change from a community standpoint in St. John. It may not mean anything to the government, or it may not even mean anything to us in St. George or wherever, but to the people in that community. Some of the older ones that would have grown up with the facility and whatnot, some of their history is in those buildings. Some of them may very well have gone to school there, in those buildings. And we see the same thing being played out in Bridgetown, where the Pierhead project is concerned. The same mentality, the same attitude, we don't give a damn about what you think, we're just going to knock down this and knock down that, knock down all the buildings coming down Bay Street, knock down everything going down into the Pierhead and so forth. We don't care. We got, what's the rush? What is the rush? And that is, that's my closing comment as it relates to this particular area. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, um, one last thing here. Marcia sent this to me. I can put it up on the screen.
She says that we can go to 10:25 or 10:30 or something.
I don't know if you got that message.
No,
Forward
no,
that
no,
to
I
me.
don't know. I know. I mean, if we have a good thing going, we might as well.
If we have a good flow, if we have a
Might
good
as well
flow.
finish it.
Well, I don't mind doing that because I'm going into it with you all, and so I can. You all will help me bear the brunt. Now, the only thing is now I don't know how to get this one up on the screen. Um, but you all, while I'm trying to get it up on the screen, you all would have got it from me. This is the one from the article written by Mr. Hode.
Okay.
And this refers to three areas: no flow, no go, and no. Okay. And there were two that caught my attention more so than the no go, was the no flow and the no. But especially the no one. The no one caught my attention more so than even the no flow. Oh dear. Thank God for a little humor. Oh, thank God, Mr.
Richard,
Hode, for
Mr.
the
Hall
humor.
is something else.
Yes, I am telling you. So let's take a look at it quickly as we come to the end of the program. Um, we know the issues with flow. I don't think that comes as any surprise to anyone at the moment. I am going to bypass the one to do with the no go and come down to the one which seemed to be a more pressing issue, is the no. And that final paragraph, he says there, in 2018, this government, to bolster the economy, and Glenn, we may pull we may pluck your knowledge for this, took away the savings of our most vulnerable group, pensioners. Inexcusable and unforgivable. My sister-in-law, Frances Chandler, put all her retirement savings in supposedly safe government bonds. She had to battle expensive cancer treatments in her last days without them. And with so much money floating around, billions of dollars in debt we are, you would think that they would be the first to be restored. No way. My wife, one of her beneficiaries, is now 75. She will receive her final payment in 2033.
Wow.
If alive, in her 80s. Shame on this government. Glyne, I come to you first.
Well, I I I share his anguish. I share his discomfort, because that repudiation of that rewriting the whole profile and history of debt settlement in Barbados, either externally or domestically, had wiped out a history of which I was very proud. That Barbados had never before 2018 defaulted on a debt. Never ever. That was one of our proudest achievements. And for that to have been undertaken just to impress the IMF, and for that we must thank part of the Prime Minister, Mr. Strawn, and Dr. Agnes Bouchard, and Dr. Kevin Greenwich. Those are the architects of this work, and boss and best. But like you said, $1.3 billion taken out of the NIS with promises to refinance it. Maxine, have you ever heard anything about any refinancing like that?
No, not the restructuring, the way they did it and so on. No.
So that is still to be done. In addition, what also, and I was very clear that the manifesto pledge to win vote was to give this 25% increase in what the pensioners, the one who had non-contributory pensions, which was a very noble gesture. But I didn't think it was going to be done at my expense as a pensioner who would have contributed to NS and never once had sick leave in all my years, never draw a cent, only then to be not given our annual increase. I think we still get that annual increase that the law was supposed to control. So I understand the damage, the unfairness that has been done to Barbadians. And nobody, people pretend it has not happened. You have an NIS where you don't hear a single word out of the chairman or the board. Things just happen. There's no accountability to the public. So I do feel very, very strongly about that. And I understand the problems that Mr. Howard has with that. And I think that we should put pressure on the INS to be cut. Sorry, I beg your pardon. NISS, not NIS, to be more accountable to the Barbados. They owe it to us. They have a backlog of recompense to us. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, ALWYN?
I mean that when I read this, that's a painful thing to do to persons who work all their lives and invest in bonds, believing that when it came time for them to reap the benefits that they would, and to have that taken away, that would have been so unfair. At the same time, you will remember that they forgave many
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
They forgive persons the VAT forgiveness.
And who was one of those persons?
And wrote off taxes that they owe the government.
And you know who was one of those persons?
But you gotta help with your family sometime.
Yeah, but not so.
My.
You know, I must say that I am weary of the slogan "Mia cares," because when I look around this country, and you know, I've had some discussion with people on my Facebook page concerning the cost of living and so on in this country. I am standing to be corrected by you gentlemen and you lady. But when the Prime Minister was in opposition and Mr. St. Clair raised the VAT in Barbados to 17.5% as a temporary measure, and then came back and made it a permanent feature, that the present Prime Minister opposed it bitterly. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Am I correct?
That's right. That's right.
I would expect, therefore, any reasonable thinking person would expect that coming to office, facing all that we are facing at the moment, and this is not to take away from what, because I want to come back to that, but I am dealing with the simplicity of something to show how, again, disrespectful and uncaring these acts are. That you would have come to Parliament as your first act in the House and reduce the VAT back to 15%. That was never done.
And it won't be done.
And it will not be done.
Not by
unless for
this
votes.
Minister of Finance. I wanna comment on this,
Go
but
ahead.
in relation to national insurance and the ability to repay, because I can understand the anger, the agony, and all of that of pensioners, because I remember when this thing first surfaced, there was a lady who you could describe in similar terms. And when she worked out, she was 85 or more at the time. And when she looked, she said, well, I won't be around to receive my benefits. Now, I'm going to raise an issue and ask a question in this after making a comment. The Prime Minister, in talking about the need to find about 60,000 more people, she was essentially saying that the government has indicated that in order to maintain the integrity of the national insurance scheme, we need to maintain, and I wrote down the word a healthy workforce, but I don't mean healthy in terms of physical health. I mean healthy in terms of numbers and persons contributing. Okay, and you cannot dispute that's necessary to keep the scheme going, because that's how it is done. Against that background, therefore, I want to ask the Prime Minister, as Minister of Finance, as head of government, and to the Minister of Labor, as a man, I would call him almost of the cloth, because he's an elder in his church and all of that. Is there any truth that there are workers, foreign workers or non-national, because I don't believe CARICOM workers would work for this, but I can't swear, who are working at a hotel under construction, who are receiving, I would say, in their hands, I use this word, are receiving US $24.70 a day, and the equipment operators receiving $30 a day. And when the person sent this to me, my first question is, where are they accommodated and how much money are they paying? So, or how much money is the owner of the accommodation receiving per worker? And I raise that because I will not imagine that equipment operator will get gross $60 Barbados, because it says 30 US. And the question is, are these workers, first of all, paying national insurance because they're employed in Barbados in place of other workers? Are they doing jobs that Barbadians refuse to do or cannot be found? And on what basis are they being paid this kind of money, if that is the case? In other words, are they receiving money net of money removed, taken for accommodation or anything else? Or are you paying somebody outside of Barbados a portion of their salary to be distributed or whatever in any way? But so my question is, against the background, and I'm repeating myself for emphasis, against the background of what we understand is necessary for the national insurance scheme to continue to meet its obligations in the future, and against the background of the kind of wages that are typically paid, are people paying this, and what else are they receiving, either in the form of accommodation and or meals or anything else, or the payment of part of their salary outside of Barbados? So is this what exactly is happening? Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Labor, but I also call on the main trade union in Barbados, which is the one that mobilizes workers outside, across the country, let me put it like that, beyond the public service, the head of the Barbados Workers Union and now Member of Parliament, Tony Moore, to speak to this issue. If it is a lie, come and debunk it fast so that it does not gain legs. If it is true, tell us why this is happening and what is the full extent of wages paid. Who are these workers? Where are they from? How were they recruited? Where are they accommodated? Because this smacks of exploitation in the absence of fuller explanations. I used to be a minister for 11 months responsible for immigration, and people took, as the British, I said, they tried to take the Mickey out of me, but they couldn't take the MAXINE out of me. But I will tell you, if I had stayed long enough, I had lined up some people that needed to be prosecuted for exploiting workers. because I was gathering the evidence. And I would hate to think that we are allowing Barbadians or anybody or investors, whoever they may be, to exploit anybody from anywhere to the exclusion of providing decent wages to Barbadians. Because you're hearing on the one hand, we either don't have enough, and that's a possibility. But we're also hearing that people don't want work. But my question is, what wages are you offering to people? What terms and conditions? Because we cannot be constructing anything in this country in the name of luxury, in the name of visitor accommodation or anything else in a manner that perhaps is less than acceptable or deemed to be the norm. So I put those questions there. They were fed to me. And I said, the last thing I want to say, is it true that we can expect 300, not nurses this time, but construction workers coming from Ghana in West Africa? And I understand that those workers are supposed to be accommodated at Harrison Point. That's another issue that was brought to my attention. And I told the person I had no such information, but the best I can do is to ask the question. And we can either have a swift, as I said before, a swift denial or a presentation of the facts to Barbadians. Thank you, gentlemen.
Before, can I make one comment, Ferdy?
Yeah.
Being the senior on this panel, I never thought I'd live to see the day that achievements, legal requirements, entitlements that had been accorded to Barbadian workers out of the Barbados Labour Party and the BW that came from it, where conditions of labor were entrenched in law. I never thought I'd live to see the day where they have been virtually totally abandoned, discarded, ignored. I was suspect from my information. The vast majority of the workers are being brought in because they're being brought in on so-called as contract workers, where the minimum wage have been ignored. They've been exploited to the hilt. They're paying no insurance, NIS. They're paying no BABB. So nothing is being contributed to society, and this is coming from something which is called decent. The Barbados workers used to make a big deal about decent work. This is indecent exploitation in this day and age. But we have got, again, thanks to our love affair with the IMF, we have inherited a mentality from that developed world where, look at what President Trump is doing, where people's basic entitlements that we took for granted at Barbados are being discarded, repudiated, and these persons are coming for short term. They'll be used, they will go back home, maybe, unless they kept here, and Barbados will be, they'll be worse off, and Barbados will be no better off themselves. So, and then what made, I heard the Minister of Labor, the Honorable Colin Jordan, say himself that the NIS, or the Minister of Labor, the NIS does not have enough inspectors, to go and check the books and documents of businesses to make sure they're making contributions to the NS. That workers are now expected to check for themselves, go online and check for themselves and seeing if the employer is paying in an environment in which it is known that there's some employers that they can't keep checking and then they'll fire you. So it is a sad state of affairs. And I'm not sure who's the bigger culprit, the BW or the Barbados Labour Party. But I think that probably equally blamed because I understand they're very much in bed together.
Well, it's almost as if the workers in Barbados no longer have the credible representation we used to know of. I remember in my younger days, even when Errol Barr was Prime Minister, and I am giving way to you, GLYN, as the senior among us. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember Frank Walcott, who was a member of the DLP, standing up against Errol Barr.
Right.
Am I correct? I mean,
Of course, of
I
course.
was
You
a
are
little fella
correct.
then.
You are
I was a
correct.
little fella
That,
then. I
that
didn't
was
know
the
a lot
norm.
about
That was
politics.
the
I didn't
norm.
know a lot, but I remember Frank Walcott facing down Errol Barra when it came to representing the workers of this country. And I don't see that happening now at all. Again, I stand to be corrected. I do not ever hear, except for Kentucky, I think it was. I think that was the other one, but then Kentucky is a private operation. But let me just make this closing comment. Alvin, I'll give you the final word because I believe the lady indicated that she had given her final word on the matter. So remember, we lost the election. Okay, so just remember that part. But
A, se- a
would I
secret
be
vote. A
correct?
secret vote.
Secret vote, yeah.
Secret vote.
Um, but would I be correct in suggesting that the reason or the possible reason for the increase in retirement age is because the national insurance does not have the
Right.
funds
That's right.
to facilitate the people who should have retired when they needed to retire?
Right.
Would I be reading that correctly, or am I missing something?
I think that's the only valid conclusion. Because an evaluation had been done under Winarton, and the previous 65 had been set for a while. But because the shortfall, or I'm not financial risk, but I went to school in August and I learned a lot every Saturday. That shortfall 1.3 has to be made up, but the only way to be made it make more people work longer, to pay a higher rate to try to make it that. And that's probably
Right.
no guarantee. We have to see if they can come back for us in some other form to try to bolster it. I don't think it's over
Wow.
yet.
Wow. I tell you,
Maxi, you're the financier of this thing, so tell me, am I right or wrong?
No, I think it may. They also, the actuaries, they do their reports and they do projections. So essentially, what they're saying is, at the rate that we're going, we have to move it up to ensure that you don't run into those difficulties. But the challenge we have now is that those actuarial projections would have been based on certain levels in labor force. But if we see what I described happening now, you're going to accelerate a problem,
There you are.
you
Right.
know?
So,
wow, I had to put together this program for tonight, and I think you all would have seen the caption, "What in God's name is going on in Barbados?" And I must say that listening to all that has been shared on the show by all of you, I think I picked the right question
yeah.
because I think we are all at a loss. There has to be a change. I saw a comment made by Paul Messiah, which carried me back, Maxine, to that statement. I think it was Belshazzar is his name. I have never been good at reading the Greek uh, three words. I would look it up now, but I don't have the time.
I can let
But
Alvin respond to that. I haven't heard from him yet.
Alwyn, you know the three words I'm talking about.
No,
Equi-
I don't
He
know.
might say something else. So he might speak on other matters, right, Alvin?
Yes.
There are those three words that have been expressed. I don't know what language it was, but the translation I'm told is, "You have been weighed in the balances and
Confirm.
found wanting."
Yes, I saw
Right.
that earlier.
And
That's
I must say that that fits this government to the T. You have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. I want to thank all of you for being on the show tonight. It has been another exceptionally educational show. I saw several comments in the chat with regards to it. I want to thank you, GLYN, for your tremendous contribution earlier on, and Alwyn for your contribution, especially in the area of education. You are the mind here on the platform with that, and Maxine again. As we looked into the whole aspect of the drugs, the aspect of drug abuse. Let me put it that way, because people want to focus on, let's say, marijuana, or want to focus on rum or whatever. But I tend to, because I have to face, as a minister, I have to face a number of different components in our community. We have to sit down and counsel children, parents, grandchildren, grandparents, all kinds of people. We become lawyers, we become accountants, financiers. We become everything. And I must say that it has been a view of mine that we are engaging in a number of abusive environments in the country, including, of course, one that nobody ever wants to talk about, and that's spousal abuse. But I think we covered a number of great subjects tonight. I trust that we have been able to eliminate, or should I illuminate, a number of the issues, particularly with respect to the matter of marijuana and the whole aspect of its legitimacy in the country's legalization, and again in the context of education, our declining, our declining educational process here in the country. uh, I had an exchange with someone who works in the DPP's office just yesterday, and I must say that I was asking him for solutions in terms of crime and violence, and I must say, wow, his comments to me made me stop and think significantly that we have to get some solutions for our country before or we lose our country. And I think we're having a lot of things happening that the people in Barbados are not pleased with, and the government is not paying attention. Those are my closing comments. Mr. Babb, I will give you the final word.
Thank you very much. My concern and my closing remarks will be this borrowed money. We hear the
Mm,
government borrows money to prop up foreign reserves. We have expressed our concerns with the national insurance. Has anyone given any thought that millions, some of the millions borrowed, can be used to prop up our national insurance? And that is my closing remark.
well, I tell you, it's a good thing it is because you almost tempted me to go another few minutes, but I can resist your temptation.
Go with the spirit, Freddie. Go with the spirit.
Yeah, the spirit is telling me
Follow the spirit.
close the show before I lose my job.
Thank
Maxine,
you very
God
much.
bless you. It has been a pleasure having you on the show tonight. And Glyne, thank you so very much
My
for
pleasure also.
consenting to be with us again tonight. And Alwyn, of course, we always appreciate you making yourself available. All of you we know, well, I would say two of you we know are busy people. The other one is a senior, so I'm not too sure how busy how busy he is.
Might be the most
It's not
busy.
for me. He may be busier than all of us combined together.
You trying to find out my business that I ain't saying a word. That for lick you.
All right.
But it
Good
has been
night,
a joy
everybody.
Good
sharing the
night,
show with
everybody.
you all,
All
and we
right.
wish you each a good night. God
A
bless
blessed
you.
good night to
And
all.
Thank you. Bye
Say
bye.
good night. Good night,
loyal
everybody.
Rest
opposition, thank
well.
you so much for being
Same to
with us.
you.
All of you, Monica, Jonathan, V. Hoy, all of you, thank you so much. Adrian, Beverly, Paul, all of you. My goodness, Charles, Monica, Jonathan. Oh my square four, Andrew, or all of your contributions. I've been looking at them. Judith, thank you so very much. Oh, I almost forgot one thing, and that would be uh, I want to thank Dave and Marcia for allowing me to share this closing segment here with you. And it has to do with my wife's, oh dear, that's not the right one. It has to do with my wife's, how do I do this? Okay. My wife's urgent medical matters. She has been diagnosed with a very serious situation to do with a gallstone blocking um, her bile duct entering the pancreas. We are told that it could be life threatening. It is life threatening. It could result in jaundice. She has a number of abdominal issues to do with the pancreas, gallbladder, and bile duct that requires two surgeries not available in Barbados because the ERCP, I think it is, machine, there's none on the island. She has to deal with life-threatening injections and other effects on other organs. And I want to thank Dave and Marcia for giving me the opportunity to share our GoFundMe page. It is I think I can send the link here, but she is facing a number of challenges, and we are required to raise 75,000 US dollars. This will cover her diagnostic tests, surgeons, anesthetists, room charges, physicians, consultants, advanced diagnostics, medical and follow-up care, her hospital stay, airfare, transportation, post-surgery accommodation, living expenses, and in addition to that, uh, the aspects of engaging vascular surgeons, neurologists. Uh, to put it bluntly, she needs a full overhaul. I think she's in need of a comprehensive service. And so we have the GoFundMe page, which you're seeing here on the screen, and I will try to see if I can copy the link and put it in the chat for you, that it would be recorded there for you to follow. So I'll just take a moment at the end of the show here. I want to thank all of you for your support. Several of you have already made contact with us, and several of you have already contributed. And we are deeply, deeply appreciative of your contribution. And I'm just going to copy the link and put it here in the chat. So thank you all very much for helping us through this process. Let me see. Yes, I have put it there in the chat. I hope it comes through to everyone. But thank you also very much for helping us in this process. It's been a very difficult one for us. And of course, needless to say, we are just praying that we can get through everything. I don't need to lose her, and I certainly do not want to lose her. Definitely not now, that's for sure. Maybe after I'm gone, she can do that. But thank you all very much for your support, and we are deeply appreciative of whatever you're able to give. Every small amount makes a difference. Thank you so very much. GLYN, Maxine,
My,
ALWYN,
my respect.
good night and
Good
God
Thank
night.
you.
bless you
Good
all.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.